Hi everyone, this is What If Fan. We are back with another part of What If There Was a Different Luffy. Please find fanfic name and author name in the description and please support the author. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Also, the series What If Transmigrated to Yu-Gi-Oh! GX is almost finished for now due to catching up with the current number of chapters. So I would like everyone's input for the next project on this channel. I am currently debating between 3 fanfics. 1. What if Transmigrated as Harry Potter? 2. What if Ninja in Jujutsu Kaisen? 3. What if sign-in system in High School DxD? Please comment below on what fanfic you would like to see next on this channel. I will also be creating a poll for the same. Let's start. Chapter 341, The New Era is Coming. 03. Third-person POV. Grand Line. The events unfolding in Lodetown began to spread around the world wherever the broadcast reached, with pirates from North, West, and South Blue each drawing their own conclusions as they set sail. They declared this to be an era where the Marines were losing power and the age of pirates was advancing to a new peak. However, for the people of the Grand Line, this could spell trouble. With all the pirates now heading for the Grand Line, the number of crimes would explode across various kingdoms. In Alabasta, where one of the broadcasts was centered, several kingdoms had come to watch the battle, especially its allies. Those kids. They've really grown even more. Correa said, striking a pose next to the King of Drum, who kept his arms crossed, nodding. Chopper fainted at the end of the fight, but I no longer need to worry about him, he has very strong companions, now I can enjoy my youth, she said at the end. Vivi. King Cobra, also watching the broadcast, murmured as soon as it was cut off. The princess is fine, my king, Pell spoke. Yes, but... King Cobra murmured before continuing. Did she have some volume in her belly, he asked. What do you mean by that, my king? Igaram looked surprised at the comment. I'm asking if she's pregnant, he exclaimed, leaving everyone stunned. Alabasta needs an heir. My daughter must bear the future king. He exclaimed, leaving the guards and advisors speechless. I want to see my grandchild soon, the king exclaimed in his mind, with a strong desire to continue his lineage. He's alive, everything turned out fine. Elsewhere, Mr. 3 was on a destroyed street while the whole place was devastated. I know, but I didn't want him to almost die like that. He didn't even tell us he was going to war. Makino said with dried tears, deeply shaken by the scene of Luffy. She began kicking the ground in agony, increasing her weight and destroying the entire street. There's nothing we can do about it, he had everything planned. Besides, he declared that Ace of the Fire Fists is his brother, Mr. 3 spoke, trying to calm the girl. Meanwhile, another person there was spinning in a whale form while crying, but with joy. Loyui wa Fai-Chan was so amazing. Bentham exclaimed joyfully as he watched all the scenes in front of him with delight. He fought so hard and in the end, saved his friends, it's so incredible, he said excitedly. In Water 7, the mayor finished watching the broadcast with a sigh. It seems that besides Eni's lobby, they would destroy the very headquarters of the Marines. But Frankie wasn't there, means he went somewhere else. Iceberg murmured as his city was silent. It was no secret that this place was Straw Hat territory after he left here. The defeat of the Marines was bad, but it also made Iceberg smile at the end. High in the sky a few kilometers from there, Skypiea continued floating with several islands around it, while Shiki's scientist had hacked the broadcast system and put it on for everyone on the island to watch. Well, it looks like they did it. A woman from Skypiea murmured. Thank goodness. Luffy is fine. Yuta exclaimed, touching her heart. She also felt agony with Luffy being hurt that way by the Gorasius, but in the end, he was fine. That was super cool. Frankie exclaimed, striking his pose. Ya ho ho ho. They were too much. Brooke exclaimed. He. Laboon agreed, but his sound was so loud that everyone covered their ears. After all, Laboon got stranded in the middle of the city after losing his small form with Luffy using his awakening, while he had to wait for Luffy to return. Shark. Megalo, who wasn't as big, but still had his 20 meters with a bubble ring around his waist for him to fly. Guren, Luffy's monkey, remained silent, but seemed to have a sparkle in his eye after seeing the strength of those fights. They beat Moria-sama. Perona was still dissatisfied with the scene of Moria getting beaten by Jinbei and the others. But in the end they got out of that chaos. Not that I'm happy about it, she said before pouting and looking away, while her ghost manifested looking at her as if she were lying. Amazing, when I see him again, I'll ask him to marry me. Lola also exclaimed from the crowd of spectators in Skypiea. Meanwhile, Gonfal was pondering what he had witnessed, staring at the sky. There were no clouds left, just the comet filling the sky beyond the blue. After all, Luffy's punch had reached them and dispelled all the clouds in the sky with a strong gust of wind. It was frightening. So this is a fight of the people from the Blue Sea, a man from Skypiea murmured. And to think they are so powerful. Another spoke. You saw Enel, that bastard was there, and even he seemed so weak compared to the great forces. These people are frightening. Everything seemed calm. The crowd continued murmuring, until suddenly, an explosion occurred and everyone in the City of Angels looked toward a floating island powered by Beepo. Hey, what's happening? Yuta asked. Hello, what's happening here? The scientist activated the Den Den Mushi and inquired of the men. My lord, the prison exploded. Someone is trying to escape. He exclaimed as people looked at each other. Let's go. Yuta wiped away her tears and spoke, and all the others followed to see what was happening. Meanwhile, in another place in that sea, below the sea, the island of the fishmen was also finishing watching the broadcast. But unlike the shock, all the merfolk and sirens exclaimed, leaving the country in celebration. Hooray! Whitebeard lived. Yes, they rescued his crew member and he's still alive. The fishmen exclaimed in celebration, happy that their protector had survived. Our great friend is alive. They exclaimed. After all, Whitebeard was someone the entire Fishman Island held in great regard. Seeing him alive after everything that happened was truly surprising and made them joyful. It seems he is alive after all. Shirley murmured, after all, she had seen a vision of the future that Whitebeard could die due to a great enemy, but that enemy ended up being defeated by someone else. As the population of Fishman Island gathered in the center of the island, a boat at the harbor, flying the Big Mom flag, had Kotagari and frowned upon it, as they did not expect this outcome. Fukaboshi approached them. Well, Big Mom pirates, you saw what happened and it's better you leave here, as Whitebeard must be coming here at this very moment, he said. Katakuri, with arms crossed and despite practically being expelled from the island, nodded in the end and looked at Smoothie who was with him. Let's go, he said, and they started leaving the island the next moment, returning to the New World. Mom won't be happy about this, Smoothie commented. There's nothing we can do, just hope she doesn't freak out. Katakuri said at the end, as even if they tried to take the territory, they would have to face the entire surviving fleet returning from Marineford alone, which doesn't seem like a good choice. Meanwhile, back at the island's plaza, Neptune was crying in a corner of the plaza. It's so good that Whitebeard didn't die. Ruboshi, one of his sons, spoke joyfully. But Neptune shook his head. Yes, that's great. But my daughter has grown so much, I can't hold back my tears, he exclaimed, as he remembered Shirahoshi fighting in the middle of the war. He was extremely enraged when he saw this, seeing his daughter in such a dangerous place, but still, after not seeing her for months, she had changed so much, and even chosen a trident as her own weapon. He was proud. That's true, and think that she possesses the Conqueror's haki. Manboshi murmured beside his brother. I hope she comes here, otherwise I myself will go hunting them, Neptune murmured at the end, while Shirahoshi's brothers nodded. In the New World, the survival of Whitebeard took everyone by surprise, especially those who were watching on their islands the battle and had to immediately call their subordinates scattered through the New World going to or already being in Whitebeard's territories to conquer them, informing the occurrences and causing chaos everywhere, making the majority immediately retreat. Big Mom, the only Yonko who had stayed in the New World, was shocked by everything she witnessed on Whole Cake Island, wondering how this could have happened. Mom, what will we do? One of her children asked. That old man didn't die. There's nothing we can do. Damn it, but that straw hat. What was that power? She murmured with a certain gleam of fear in her eyes upon seeing Luffy's explosion. How could that rookie have such power? She had never seen anything like it and it was frightening. We can't let that kid grow up, she concluded in the end, as no one would be able to stop him if he were as strong as he was at that moment. She had also never seen a Gorosei, and seeing one made her very cautious about the world government as well. As Big Mom plotted her plans, chaos ensued in Dressrosa. Doflamingo's men were desperate, now that the king was dead, who was the mind behind all the schemes and all the underworld market dealings. Now with Doflamingo dead, all the phones were ringing in the royal palace. After hearing the news of Doflamingo's death, Princess Viola was lost in a corner, but could do nothing, while watching Doflamingo's men cry and answer the calls, being cautious about what they could now do. Even though her kingdom was free from Joker, she still couldn't fight those people. How could this happen? How could Doflamingo die like that? And Baby 5? That traitor, they exclaimed, cursing. We have no choice, we'll have to talk to the beast pirates. Diamante spoke more rationally. The Don Quixote pirates were coming to an end with the death of Doflamingo. What they could do now was seek help from a more powerful group. How can you be so cold? Treble exclaimed, crying. We have no choice, we must seek protection. Without Doflamingo, other Yonkou or even other forces operating in this sea will try to take Dressrosa. He spoke at the end. Even if we have to give everything to Kaido. This will be our only chance to get out of this situation now. He spoke at the end and everyone agreed. Viola frowned, imagining that now that her country was freed from one monster, another monster would take over, leaving the future uncertain. It seems the war is over. A revolutionary spoke in a remote country. Yes, Ivankov and the boss are okay after everything. Another murmured. Whitebeard is still alive, but seeing the death of a Gorosei, that even marked the sky, is really incredible. Yes. We don't know what will happen to the world now, but look up, this is the mark of hope. Remember this scene, it's the hope that we can defeat the world government, no matter how powerful they are, someone spoke. The mark of hope. Others murmured, looking at the purple comet in the sky. Koala was watching Sabo sleeping when she heard a commotion outside. Mark of hope? What are they talking about? She murmured and looked at Sabo a moment later, hoping he would wake up soon. Meanwhile, back in Paradise Sea, ships with the flag of the Whitebeard fleet continued sailing, while a ship with a skeleton marking scars on one of its eyes, being none other than red-haired Shanks, approached. Shanks himself looked ahead, bewildered, wondering what had happened at Marineford. Watching the Whitebeard fleet half leaving, while the cries of celebration were even heard from there, with the Red Force in the distance. Chapter 342, The New Era is Coming. 04. Third-person POV. Grand Line. While the world reacted one way, Marineford finally managed to calm things down, but the atmosphere was somber. Sengoku looked frustrated at what remained of the Marine headquarters. Sailors seemed paralyzed as they looked at the trail of destruction. Some, by some luck, had been unconscious since the Straw Hat crew unleashed their Conqueror's Haki and were not crushed by the destruction while unconscious. They finally woke up, still remembering the arrival of the Straw Hats as if it was just a second ago. They were now facing the current reality of the Marine situation. Hey! What happened here? The sailor trembled as he surveyed the area. How could this happen? The sailor trembled, viewing the situation. The other sailors who had witnessed all the chaos wore dejected expressions. Garp emerged from among some rocks, tossing them aside as he looked grimly after being punched by his son. We don't have time to lament the Navy's terrible defeat, we need to start rescuing those who need help and conduct damage control. Garp approached Sengoku, continuously clenching his teeth as he viewed Marineford. You're right. Sengoku finally spoke, before starting to issue a command that resonated throughout Marineford. Everyone, take care of all the injured sailors and I want reports of all our losses. He exclaimed. Officers began to issue orders as sailors helped each other, rescuing sailors hanging from cliffs, others trapped in rubble, or even on top of structures that Luffy had created with his body falling to the ground. This continued for a while as Sengoku saw Kuzan approaching, the only admiral. Well, after all, Kizaru was being dragged injured but still alive. The worst of all was Akainu, who lost an arm while fighting the Straw Hat alone. My lord, here's the report. An officer approached with the papers after surveying the entire field. The situation was much worse than they had imagined. 40,000 Navy soldiers were killed. Besides Kuzan being the only admiral not down, all the Shichibukai were defeated except for two. Mihawk had stopped acting after his fight with Zoro while Hancock had fled with the pirates. He murmured. Mihawk had left Marineford without saying anything a moment before and didn't respond to any questions. Kuma, Moria were being carried unconscious, while the worst was Doflamingo being carried dead by the sailors. From the World Government Team, 2 CP0 members are dead. Kong is also defeated, along with another 4 Tenryubitos. He continued reading the report while a group was rescuing them. Furthermore, Monkey D. Luffy killed a Tenryubito, still having 6 under his custody. Squard killed another after being defeated by the Straw Hats. He finished with frustration. This was an unprecedented scandal in this era, not even Gold Roger had done such a thing. Garp said nothing, even more frustrated by his granddaughter now becoming a pirate, but relieved inside that Ace, Luffy, and Lucy were still alive, despite all the destruction they caused in this war. And Blackbeard disappeared along with his crew and the prisoners he managed to get from Impel Down, that bastard. Sengoku murmured, realizing there was no more sign of his crew since Marineford began to fall. Fleet Admiral. An officer came running to him with a Den Den Mushi. A call from Mary Geos. The man spoke. Sengoku sighed. That was expected. He spoke, picking up the Den Den Mushi. Sengoku. The somber voices of the elders were heard. Sengoku even had to swallow hard. He had never heard this tone from them. They must be enraged. Yes. Sengoku responded cautiously. Come to Mary Geos immediately, we need to talk. They spoke in the same tone, leaving no room for discussion as he simply nodded. Kuzan, I want you to be responsible for organizing Marineford. I am going to the Holy Land. Sengoku spoke at the end. He had to go there immediately as he leapt into the air and left the sailors taking care of all the damage. Sengoku could even see the fleet following through the sea as he looked angrily at those ships, but what more could he do? He just turned his face and followed his destiny. Luffy on the deck looked up at the sky with recognizing eyes. His thoughts interrupted as crew members started speaking beside him. Give me that loot. Zoro complained as Hachi handed him a bottle. I killed a Shichibukai, what else did you do? Just fought a weaker Tenryubito than my opponent. Lami started arguing with Reiju. TSK, don't get cocky because of that. I defeated my opponent much faster than you. Reiju snarled. That's because he was weaker than mine. He had the power of plasma, very similar to Kazara's fruit. She scoffed. HOI, can you two stop fighting? Shouldn't you be taking care of Luffy and the others? Vivi approached talking to Reiju, while she went over to Luffy still bandaged on the ground while all his mates were celebrating. Only Baby 5 was beside him fanning him with a fan with a pleased face. How are you? She approached her husband. I'm getting better, but I want some alcohol too. Luffy didn't hesitate to ask. You want alcohol? You need to rest. Nojiko, who was beside him, spoke in a dissatisfied tone. You know that won't stop me from drinking either. Luffy spoke. Do you want some hormones, Straw Hat Boy? Ivankov approached, and Luffy looked strangely at him. No thanks. I'd rather stay away from your hormones. Luffy had a big bias against putting hormones in his body. He didn't trust that method much and preferred to stay in that state. You know, but it's a pity your father didn't come to talk to you. I thought he would appear on the ship. Ivankov couldn't help commenting. You know he's a busy man. Luffy commented and looked at the group. Shirahoshi, can you lift me up for a moment? Luffy spoke while Shirahoshi, who was drinking a huge mug of orange juice made by Nami, occupying most of the deck with her tail to the outside, looked at him and nodded. Luffy was lifted by the two palms of her hands in that state as Shirahoshi turned to the entire crew, everyone looking at their captain all bandaged up. Guys! Luffy started while Yamato, Zoro, Kuina, Shirahoshi, Usopp, Lamy, Reiju, Nami, Nojiko, Alvida, Vivi, Robin, Hachi, Baby 5, Enel, Jimbei, Hancock Ivankov, Crocodile, Mr. 1, and his group, Lucy and Ace, who were also celebrating on the ship. Chopper, Chaochu, Hugo were in a corner passed out, but already cared for by Lamy. "Hay, get us out of here." The voice of the Tenryubitos was heard while they were still trapped in the cell. "Enel," Luffy requested. Enel nodded and struck them with lightning, making them scream in pain. Luffy had no mercy, while they finally quieted down for him to give a small speech. "Hurting false gods. I like this," Enel murmured, satisfied with the suffering of those people. "I wanted to say that we got exactly what we wanted at this moment. We marked the world with our flag, now everyone recognizes us as a force in the sea, our crew now flaunts fame and power, and when we enter the new world, nothing can stop us." Luffy spoke to everyone while most nodded. "However, we're not going to do that now," he began, leaving many surprised. "We've become powerful, but you saw what the world government can do. We faced an elder and almost lost. There are still 4 of them in Mary Geos and many holy knights we faced. And I assure you, the government has much more hidden power. While they may be in a delicate situation now, but when they recover, they will attack, so I want everyone to become even stronger. Because when we find the One Piece, the whole world will turn against us and they won't spare any effort to destroy us," Luffy exclaimed while everyone looked more serious. "One Piece, Captain?" Hugo raised his voice, waking up at this moment. "Sounds great," he said with a bruised smile. "Wolf!" Chaochu barked too. "A new adventure?" Chopper also woke up at that moment, being in the same state as Luffy, unable to move much. "One Piece? Of course, the one who will find it will be Pops." Ace crossed his arms and exclaimed. Luffy looked at the other ships while seeing everyone celebrating there. Moby Dick was also in celebration, but another ship approaching them caught his attention, while Luffy cracked a small smile seeing Shanks appearing. "Luffy, I'm heading to my ship. You'll have to come there when you're better," Ace declared, cutting through Luffy's thoughts as he nodded. "All right, tell your old man I want a rematch with him," he said with a smile. "You're not in any state for that, damn it," Lamy exclaimed with a scowl. Ace just smiled and leaped into the air, transforming into a line of flames while launching other explosive flames into the sky, celebrating as all the pirates watched excitedly. "Ace!" everyone exclaimed, watching him slice through the sky before landing on the Moby Dick. "Ace!" all the commanders and their subordinates quickly exclaimed as they greeted their old mate. "Guys!" Ace exclaimed, hugging everyone excitedly. He stopped and looked at his father a bit better after Marco gave him some assistance. "Gorarara!" Whitebeard laughed seeing his son, and finally smiled. "Good to see you back, kid." "Pops," he said, with a few tears running down his eyes. "Don't cry, now let's celebrate," Whitebeard declared. "Yes." The crew jumped excitedly. But Whitebeard wasn't finished yet. "However, there's someone approaching that we need to take care of first." He spoke and looked ahead as another Yonko's ship approached. "Lo yu fi yi." Lucy finally noticed while pointing ahead, stunned. "Shanks is here?" she exclaimed in disbelief. Everyone looked at the ship called Black Pearl, with curious glances. "Wait. Shanks, the red-haired?" Nojiko exclaimed, surprised. "Yes, but don't worry, he's not here to do harm, he's an old acquaintance. Some of you still don't know, but the one who gave me this hat, it was him," Luffy declared, surprising those who had joined after they entered the Grand Line, since Luffy hadn't shared that fact yet. "Shirahoshi, move me forward," Luffy requested as Shirahoshi delicately placed Luffy at the front of the ship. He took a deep breath before releasing a statement that resonated across all the ships there. "Shanks, you finally showed up, you bastard, now we'll fight to the death," he exclaimed, leaving everyone stunned. Without the power of his devil fruit, he had to shout, but his words made his crew fall to the ground the next moment. "What's this all of a sudden?" they exclaimed. Meanwhile, at the prow of the Red Force, Shanks looked ahead, cracking a smile at this moment. Chapter 343, The New Era is Coming. 05. Third-person POV. Grand Line. The sound of Luffy was heard by everyone as people looked stunned at the ship, noticing the red force at this moment. "Ake no Shanks is here," the pirates quickly exclaimed. The reinforcement continued approaching the ships at the front of that fleet, while Moby Dick was among them. "Shanks." Newgate looked at Shanks on his ship, while Shanks looked back at him with a more serious tone as soon as he saw him. "Honestly, I came here thinking I'd find you dead and wanted to save whoever I could from your crew," Shanks said without hesitation. "You think Pops would die just like that, Shanks?" Ace immediately exclaimed, dissatisfied. "Ow, I see you're fine, Ace, I'm glad about that," Shanks admitted, smiling at Ace who was gritting his teeth. "Anyway, it seems that everything went well." He looked back at Newgate. "You can say that." Whitebeard didn't seem offended by Shanks' words. After all, he himself thought about sacrificing himself, but he managed to survive that place. Even though he faced Teach with that strange power in Kaido, the Navy had to direct their forces to deal with another crew. "I had some help," he admitted in the end. Shanks nodded. "Seems like it's true," he murmured, looking at one of the last ships there, being the one representing the flag with his old hat, given by his former captain. "Shea monks!" Lucy exclaimed excitedly from the ship. "Lucy! You're here, which means you left the Navy." Shanks seemed to sparkle with that. "Yes." Lucy responded a bit sad about it, but seemed not to regret it. "And you, Luffy?" Shanks looked at the boy lying in the palms of the giant mermaid on his ship. "You seem to have grown a bit, but you're still just a kid, not strong enough to face me, brat." "Ha ha 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 ha." Shanks began to mock. "Boss." Lucky Roo approached while Shanks was laughing. Shanks looked curious. "Everyone's looking at you like you're an idiot," he told his captain, who turned back to Whitebeard's pirate crew and saw that everyone was looking at them that way. "Why are they all looking like that?" Shanks murmured, stopping his laughter at that moment. "So he's a Yonko too, doesn't look very strong," Nami murmured. "Don't be fooled. All my instincts tell me I'd die if I faced him," Zoro commented. "Then this is Shanks' crew," Usopp commented, scanning the crew until his eyes met someone staring at him. "Dad," he murmured, the man opening a smile for him. "Shayus." Buggy's voice echoed through the area as he appeared furious. "Oh? Buggy." Shanks opened an excited smile seeing his old mate. "Amazing. Boss Buggy is fighting with a Yonko." The prisoners began to murmur seeing this. "Shanks, you bastard. I hate you since you made me eat that Akuma no Mi and made me lose my treasure map while we were on the Oro Jackson." Buggy began to cry, remembering the immense anger he had for Shanks. "Buggy, don't be like that. I really want to catch up with you like the old times," Shanks commented. "Catch up like the old times nothing." Buggy grimaced. "Hey, someone get that ship and tie it up with ours," Shanks requested, as he was eager to see his old friend, and it seemed that no one there would mind him kidnapping Buggy. "What are you doing?" Buggy exclaimed as a steel chain locked his ship to that of Shanks. "Let's have a feast, Buggy," Shanks said with an excited smile while Buggy started to swear and asked everyone to try to remove the rope, but to no avail. "Shanks, you bastard, come to my ship and let's talk," Luffy shouted again. "No." Although he was surprised by the crowd's reaction when he mocked Luffy's challenge, after all, he didn't see what happened at Marineford besides the windy and rough sea that the Red Force had to cross twice with the strange comet that he still didn't know had made. He didn't want to meet Luffy yet. "Let's talk only in the New World. Since you are fine, I will go away," he exclaimed. "Alright, you idiot, we'll see you there then. Get ready for my fleet to invade your territory," Luffy exclaimed smiling. "I'll be waiting," Shanks said, sticking out his tongue, while looking at his men. "Let's turn around and head a different way from them," while Buggy was being dragged by Shanks. He spoke, after all his promise was still standing, but it wasn't the time to really meet Luffy. "Help me, he's trying to kidnap me," Buggy exclaimed to his companions, but no one in the Whitebeard's fleet cared. "It's a shame we won't see him," Lucky Roo complained disheartened. "Yes, but it won't be long until that happens," Yasopp said with crossed arms, looking at his son from a distance. He wanted to meet him after all these years, but as his captain said, they would leave that for the New World. "That comet in the sky," Ben Beckman murmured. "It was made by Luffy," he concluded. "Yes," Shanks admitted in the end. But still without knowing exactly what happened. Deciding to look into that later. "It seems we won't be able to see each other yet," Luffy murmured. "Shirahoshi, can you put me down?" "Luffy." Hancock approached Luffy on the ground faster than anyone else could get there first, as she looked at him worriedly. "Let me take care of you," she said. "That's great, can you bring me some alcohol?" Luffy asked cheekily. "He really won't stop drinking," Nojiko murmured. "Foo foo foo." Robin laughed and used her power to bring a bottle of sake to Luffy. "Hey, he asked me," Hancock exclaimed with a bit of anger, but still took the bottle and began to give it to Luffy. "This is life. Let's continue our feast," he exclaimed as everyone began to nod, having started a little before Luffy's and Shanks' speech. They began a great celebration at this moment while Hugo, Chaochu, and Chopper also joined in. The whole world was beginning to receive information about what happened in Marineford in the next few hours, while most people became more scared and afraid of what would happen to the sea and all the Blues and Grand Line. It was no secret to anyone that pirate activities would greatly increase and people would be more susceptible to their atrocities with an even weaker navy. The future seemed quite grim for most. And as the navy began trying to control the situation across all the seas, the pirates, victorious from the war, continued their feasts across all the ships. Beard, continuing to exclaim, they had not only victory after all since they lost many comrades in this fight. They came with 45 ships, including 43 from the fleet and 3 main ones, including Moby Dick. However, only 20 were returning and they had lost at least half of their men in the war. There were 6,000 pirates killed, but the navy lost more than 40,000 men, which gave them a crushing victory against the navy, a blow that will be remembered for this era as the navy loses most of its credibility. The pirates might be celebrating, but they also felt the pain of their dead brothers, but would leave that for later. After all, their sacrifice was not in vain in the end and they would honor them in the New World. The night soon arrived and passed while the ships continued to party, with most not going to sleep. Luffy did not hold back despite being paralyzed with his injuries and stayed on Hancock's legs laughing with his crew. The next morning, he was much better, standing but still bandaged, finding someone on the deck while he touched his belly. "I want you to be okay," Luffy said. "I will be," Hancock murmured. "Tell everyone in Amazon, the Navy won't do anything now that it's broken, but that might change soon, and when it does, we will have moved Amazon Lily," Luffy said. "Yes, I will prepare everyone for the changes," she said with a small smile. Despite Hancock having participated in the war so as not to be removed from the Shichibukais, in the end, she ended up becoming a traitor as she fought with the pirates against Saturn, and Amazon Lily could be in danger soon, so Luffy instructed her during the night to prepare the kingdom. Luffy would move it to Skypiea with Bepo, leaving them in safety, especially with the babies missing a little more than 6 months to be born. "That's good, it will be good to have our daughters close to us when they are born," Luffy said. He was excited to have his first child with her. "Then I'm going to be an aunt." At that moment, Lucy appeared excited while looking curiously at Hancock's belly. Luffy had spoken last night that he was going to be a father, and Lucy had found out everything. She stayed on top of Hancock the rest of the night asking questions. She seemed quite excited about the idea of having nieces. Hancock, who just smiled and was quite responsive to the excited girl, would not deny Luffy's sister, her excited sister-in-law, the joy of her daughters. Hancock sighed and looked at Luffy. "Well, I'm going," she said in the end. He nodded, giving a small kiss. She then began to leap into the air, flying over the sea after that. The ships were still navigating through the calm belt, so Amazon Lily was very close at this moment. Luffy turned his attention back to his ship, with his crew finally calming down from the feast, many still sprawled on the ground after drinking all night and most of the women sleeping in his room. This could also be said of the rest of Whitebeard's pirates who were all down on the ground and even in the masts. Luffy looked towards the farthest ship, Moby Dick, and saw the man sitting in his chair in the middle of the deck while also staring back at him. "Looks like we're finally going to talk," Luffy commented as he turned back to his sister. "I'm going to Ace's ship to talk with his captain. I'll be back later," he said. "I want to go too," Lucy exclaimed excitedly as Luffy leaped into the air and stretched out his hands to grab her at that moment and pull her along. Luffy just wanted to laugh at Lucy, but let the girl be carried by him as he jumped through the air with Jeppo. Despite feeling a bit of pain in that state, it was nothing that hindered him, and he advanced over all the ships. Landing on Moby Dick, with his sister clinging to him, where the man known as the strongest man in the world was waiting. Luffy faced him while the man did the same. Whitebeard was also bandaged like Luffy, as he had many injuries, and only the man was awake on the deck at that moment. Lucy was looking confused at the silence there. Neither of them spoke a word. Luffy took his eyes off Whitebeard, who looked to the side as he approached and grabbed a barrel of rum and came back towards the pirate, taking a glass and pouring it for him before tossing it to Whitebeard, who quickly moved his hand and caught the barrel. "If we're going to talk, good rum can't be missing," Luffy commented calmly, cracking a smile as he sat on the ground and his sister did the same beside him. The man just nodded. They were finally going to have their conversation. Meanwhile, in Mary Geos, things were not going well. A heated discussion began in Pangaea Castle, with Sengoku and the four elders. Sengoku could only stay quiet as the men exclaimed angry words against him and his plan, which had been a total failure with unimaginable losses. Kong appeared a few hours later, since he had recovered a bit in Marineford and woke up, but quickly left even with his injuries, as the situation was urgent. "Enough of all this, it's already happened and we should just start thinking about how to reverse this. We also agreed on the plan and it's our responsibility too, so let's start the projects," one of the elders decided. "Yes. It's time to start mass-producing pacifistas and initiating the Seraphim project," he said, while the elder only nodded, knowing very well what they were talking about. "Contact Egghead, it's time for Dr. Vegapunk to start the projects. We're going to create the greatest force the world government has ever had in the history of this world." Another elder spoke at the end with a somber voice. "Now, we also need to put bounties on all those pirates," another concluded as they nodded. A new discussion began. The bounties on the Straw Hats were to be updated. "Racoon here, I don't know the ideal number of how many men Whitebeard put into the war, so I ended up asking ChatGPT for help. It gave me this answer. In the Marineford War, Whitebeard managed to gather a considerable force of allies. In addition to his own crew, which had 16 division commanders and about 1,600 men, he also brought a large number of allies from other pirate crews. In total, it's estimated that he mobilized about 43 allied pirate captains, each with their own crew. This puts the total number of pirates under Whitebeard's command in the war at several thousands. The series doesn't provide an exact number, but considering that each allied captain could have between 50 and 100 men, the total number of men beside Whitebeard could easily exceed 10,000. I ended up putting then 11,600 men. Chapter 344, The New Era is Coming. 06. Third-person POV. Grand Line. "You are the old man Ace is so fond of, you seem like a nice guy," Lucy commented, sitting beside Luffy. "Gorarara." "And you are Lucy," Ace spoke very highly of his two brothers. Newgate spoke calmly. "Not just us, there's one more," Luffy smiled at that. "Sabo. I can't wait to see him soon." "Shishishishi," Lucy said with an excited smile. "We'll meet soon," Luffy smiled, and his gaze fell on Whitebeard. "Anyway, we are heading to Fishman Island. I'm sure Neptune will throw a grand feast," Luffy said. "He will, but do you think the man will easily accept you there after you kidnapped his daughter?" Whitebeard asked with a smile. "Of course, I'll ask her father for her hand in marriage," Luffy declared. "What, you're getting married?" Lucy exclaimed in surprise. "I can't imagine that guy's face, but it will surely be fun," Whitebeard continued with his smile. "There's that, but there are also other things that need to be done there, Luffy said with a serious tone while Whitebeard had a serious glint in his eyes. What are you talking about, kid? He asked. Fishman Island is casting a shadow that will soon cover the island in a civil war. I told this to Shira the first time we met, Luffy commented before continuing. There's a person named Hody Jones who is forming a group of fishmen with ideologies starting from a fishman named Arlong, one my navigator killed in the East Blue. Even though he was weak, he still managed to plant an ideology of fishmen hating humans, treating them as inferior beings. This guy is also behind the death of Queen Otoheim, Luffy said, while Lucy remained silent this time. Whitebeard looked very serious. Jinbei had mentioned something about this. It won't be something that happens now, they might act in a few years, but I want Shira to handle it. After all, this is her land and she is now ready for it. Luffy said. If the girl can handle it, then it's fine. Whitebeard, despite having Fishman Island as his territory, wouldn't prevent his princess from dealing with the issues. Another thing also. I intend to move Fishman Island to the surface, Luffy stated seriously. Do you think you can? Whitebeard asked, knowing the old dream of the sea folk, they wanted to coexist with humans on the surface. You know I have Shiki's power in my crew, I'm planning to bring multiple kingdoms together when I head to the New World. Luffy shared some of his plans. When will you sail these waters, kid? Whitebeard asked. Soon, but I plan to train for some time. I'm without my devil fruits at the moment. It will be an opportunity to enhance my haki and body, Luffy said. He wouldn't need to rely so much on his fruits anymore. I see, so you had a negative reaction. You really were scary to deal with that old government guy, and to think they were so strong. I don't know why they weren't sent to God Valley. Whitebeard reminisced about his youth. I had to make extreme decisions, but I didn't even have full control of my awakened form. The only thing on my mind was to kill that elder, Luffy admitted. Anyway, I don't know what would have happened if you had shown up at Marineford, Whitebeard admitted, looking up, with the comet still illuminating the morning sky. To be honest, I thought you were going to die, Luffy spoke earnestly. He didn't believe Whitebeard would make it out alive, which is why he didn't promise anything to Jinbei at Impel Down. Gorarara. Do you really think this old man would go down easily? Whitebeard mocked. But then his face turned to a more serious tone. However, with these wounds of mine, I don't think I will last much longer, he admitted, looking out to sea while no one else around listened to their conversation, except Marco hiding, the only one awake that Luffy noticed with his haki. You know that Teach will come after you, right? Luffy spoke. Yes, and let him come, next time I will be able to finish him. Whitebeard was confident. Just be careful with your fruit, it can absorb all the powers from other devil fruits and I believe it can remove the devil fruit from dead users. You know what that means, don't you? Luffy said with a gleam in his eye, as he began to drink his rum. Whitebeard was surprised for a moment and nodded. So he wants my power in his crew, he said with a bit of disgust. Not just that. Luffy shook his head. He wants your power for himself. After all, he has the ability to hold more devil powers than the Yami Yami no Mi, Luffy said. That's impossible. Whitebeard didn't believe Luffy's words while Lucy looked at her brother curiously. He was already a devil fruit user, even before using the devil fruit, Luffy revealed, speaking about his theory of how Teach's body works. After all, he has not 1 or 2 hearts, but 3. He was already a devil fruit user? Whitebeard stopped drinking as he looked at Luffy in a stunned tone. Has he ever shown that he isn't a devil fruit user? Like, have you ever seen him at sea, getting close to Seastone? Ever? Luffy asked seriously. That? I don't remember. I've never seen Teach at sea, Whitebeard admitted. I don't know how it works, but it's quite likely he ate the Teiko Teiko no Mi model, Kraken, that would make his body have 3 hearts like the mythical beast suggests. Luffy said. Whitebeard was silent for a while, thinking about what he heard. Anyway, be careful with him. I could have killed him before, but I didn't because I believe he will be a good fighter to keep the sea from getting too boring when I reach the top. So don't fall to him like that, Luffy spoke, beginning to form an arrogant smile. Gorarararara. Despite the arrogant words, Newgate was not offended by them and just laughed at Luffy. Do you think you can do again what you did in Marineford? The enemies for the one who wants to reach the top are nothing more difficult than a war with the Navy. Whitebeard said with interest. You can bet on it. Luffy smiled. He knew the enemies far better than the man known as the strongest in the world in this era of pirates. The new era is coming. Joy Boy will return, the war that will decide the future of this world will happen. And I will do whatever it takes to protect my people. I will dominate all the seas and be known not only as the king of the pirates, but the emperor of all seas, Luffy spoke confidently. I bet my arm on the new generation. The words of Shanks echoed in Whitebeard's memories as he listened to all this from Luffy, but he was shocked by the mention of Joy Boy. I wish I had lived in the era of Joy Boy. In another memory of Newgate, Roger once said this to him. Joy Boy? Who is this? Lucy asked curiously to her brother while he laughed. But before Luffy could answer, Whitebeard began to laugh. Gararararara. He started to laugh much louder than before. As everyone began to wake up with his laughter. Well done, kid, it will be a pity that I won't be here to see how this world unfolds, but it will certainly be very interesting. Whitebeard never cared about getting the One Piece. He knew what Roger predicted was never for him. His only goal was to keep his family well and have a good successor to protect them after death. It's not Teach. But is this the man you were waiting for, Roger? Newgate murmured internally, looking at Luffy, though not interested in asking who the Joy Boy that Luffy mentioned was. The crew continued waking up from Whitebeard's words echoing throughout the fleet, while Luffy maintained a calm smile for the man. Luffy, Lucy. Ace, being on the Moby Dick, approached surprised after waking up. Ace! Lucy exclaimed before they joined the crew, and the small talk between Luffy and Whitebeard turned into a feast as they spent the rest of the day with the commanders and some captains. They spent the rest of the day heading toward the Red Line, while a crew member began to coat the ships even while moving at sea to submerge in the water before descending to its depths. Meanwhile, the meeting continued nonstop among the four Gorosei, Sengoku, and Kon, deciding on the Straw Hat Crew's bounty. They weren't worried about Whitebeard. After all, he wouldn't last long after the damage he received at Marineford, but the Straw Hats were a different matter. So this is the best bounty for him. An elder decided. A rookie with such a bounty, it's absurd, but there's nothing to be done, St. Ethan Baron V. Anusjiro murmured. A bounty unprecedented for a man who has done unprecedented things. St. Marcus Mars said in a serious tone. Even though this is the official bounty, it won't be all after all. We the Tenryubitos will not let this pass easily and will put Monkey D. Luffy's head on the black market, St. Shepherd Jupiter said. Sengoku and Kong remained silent, as Luffy's photo was printed on the table for everyone to see, his bounty starting with a 3 followed by several digits. The crew of Monkey D. Luffy became the most wanted in the world. In such a situation, I believe we should call him. St. Topman Warcury commented. No, we should not bother him, St. Shepherd Jupiter advised, and the others agreed, although Kong and Sengoku didn't know who they were talking about, but they certainly wouldn't ask these four. As the elders spoke, Luffy's bounty was not just limited to that. After all, the Tenryubitos throughout Mary Geos, enraged by what they had witnessed, began to call all their contacts, further increasing Luffy's bounty. Luffy might not be the most wanted man in the world officially, but as the Tenryubitos began to gather money to kill him through the underworld, he surpassed his father, becoming truly the most wanted person in the world, despite having 6 common Tenryubitos and 2 warrior Tenryubitos hearts under his custody. Unaware of his official bounty and total bounty, 2 Black Pearls sailed underwater with Whitebeard's fleet, as finally, Fishman Island began to appear in front of them. They had finally arrived. Chapter 345, Fishman Island 01. Third-person POV. Grand Line. Fishman Island had become a spectacle in the eyes of those who had never seen it before, with its guide showcasing the gigantic island enclosed in a massive bubble, with the royal family's palace, known as Ryugu Palace, perched above it. Below the larger island were the submerged districts filled with water, where the merfolk who preferred living within the water resided. So beautiful! Yamato exclaimed, gazing at the larger island shimmering in the middle of the ocean. There were some sabaidae trees rising from that spot all the way to the surface, over 10,000 meters high. Sun rays penetrated the surface and continued down to the ocean floor, highlighting the beauty they were witnessing. So this is your home, it's incredible, Shishihara, Lucy exclaimed. It's Shirahoshi, Lucy-sama. Yes. I've never seen it from this side before, it's incredible. Shirahoshi murmured shyly, still towering at her 17 meters, since Luffy had not yet recovered the powers of his fruit. Got it. Hashirashi, Lucy smiled, messing up the princess's name once again. Nay. Finally, we're here. Hachi commented. Yes. Kami shouted next to him. They hadn't gone to Sabaody, but Hachi had used Jeppo to travel to the island with Papag to pick up the princess so they could return to Fishman Island safely after what had happened. Jimbei was also on the ship, crossing his arms with a small smile. It really is beautiful, as Shirahoshi said. Vivi commented, enchanted by the sight before her. It truly is incredible. Nami agreed while the rest of the crew made many comments about the island. The ships continued approaching the official port of Fishman Island as hundreds of merfolk wearing armor and wielding tridents awaited along with the royal family to greet them, similar to the crowd that began forming, looking curious and excited at the arrival of the Moby Dick, which was the first ship. The other ships followed closely behind, filling the port with all the ships of the fleet, while Black Pearl arrived as one of the last. Shirahoshi stood out within the coating, watching her people with bright eyes, seeing her home again after months. Father! It's our sister! Manboshi exclaimed, watching Shirahoshi coming on the last ships. Two giants stood out among them, one was Ors, who was recuperating, occupying an entire ship that barely contained him. Reiju had bathed him with phoenix flames since he was no longer at risk of death. Shirahoshi. Neptune almost cried seeing his daughter finally return home. But his attention turned to the man descending from the first ship, as Whitebeard looked as though he had just walked out of a war, strolling calmly towards Neptune who was waiting for him. It's so good to see you well, Whitebeard. Neptune spoke with a respectful tone. Gorarara. How are you, my friends? Were you expecting this old man to die? Whitebeard began to laugh. It's Whitebeard. The fishmen and the mermaids excitedly shouted for Whitebeard. He's okay, thank goodness. The crowd began to exclaim. We've prepared a feast in the island square, so please feel free to enjoy yourselves, while I want to see my daughter, Neptune spoke as Whitebeard nodded in understanding. Neptune then moved with his children to one corner of the port while the Straw Hat crew finally started to land, leaving the ship. The crew members looked curiously at the fishmen, except for those of the same species, who looked back at the crew. It's them, the princess fought in the war with the pirates. A mermaid pointed towards the giant mermaid. So he is the man who destroyed the marine headquarters. Another pointed at Luffy, who was descending at that moment. Did you see how strong our princess was? I never thought Neptune's daughter could be so powerful. I had never seen her after she isolated herself in the castle. With the death of Queen Otoheim, she's so tall. People continued exclaiming as the royal soldiers finally arrived with the king himself, and everyone had to make way for them until Neptune finally arrived in the presence of the pirates, stopping with his gaze fixed on his daughter. Daddy! Shirahoshi murmured, almost crying from missing him. My daughter. He spoke, his eyes moist. Sister. The three brothers appeared beside her. Brothers? She said, equally missing them. It didn't take long for them all to throw themselves into each other's arms as Shirahoshi embraced her father and brothers like a family. I'm so happy to have you here again, my daughter. I'm so proud of you, Neptune spoke before stepping back from his daughter. His gaze fell on the man near Shirahoshi, and as Luffy still wore many bandages on his body, Neptune's look turned to anger. When someone had spoken about a prophecy involving someone taking his daughter a while back, he swore he wouldn't let anyone steal his precious daughter, but this man had done something that took his daughter straight to the East Blue, and he had abused her, first with that inappropriate photo of the unmarried princess on a man's lap in a throne as had happened in the Goa Kingdom and other things he had seen in the newspaper. You! Neptune spoke, pointing so swiftly with his trident at Luffy's head that it created a gust of wind, causing his companions to get into a fighting stance, but Luffy just seemed calm, looking at the trident pointed at his head. You stole my daughter right under my nose. Neptune accused loudly. As the Whitebeard pirates looked on stunned from their ships, the crowd began to murmur among themselves. Stop it, Daddy. Don't hurt Luffy-sama. Shirahoshi immediately stood between Luffy and her father's trident. Shirahoshi, this human stole you. You should never have left your room. Neptune immediately argued. No. Luffy-sama saved me, helped me not be a coward. He said I could continue my mother's dream, that I can be strong enough to take care of the merfolk people. She exclaimed again, with a defiant look towards her father, and the next moment, everyone felt the sea become agitated as the island began to tremble. Hey, what's happening? Both the pirates and the merfolk quickly felt it with stunned eyes. Whitebeard looked at it also surprised, but his eyes widened when he saw that huge shadow emerge behind the bubble covering the island, with a huge sea king beginning to appear to everyone. What is that? Ace exclaimed, shocked next to an equally stunned Marco, who were looking at that huge eye watching them. Why is there a sea king there? Run! It's going to attack the island. People immediately started to get scared, seeing the creature watching them as if they were just ants. Neptune opened his eyes to that huge eye that covered all his field of vision to the sea behind the bubble. Luffy, who was not very concerned with Neptune's threats, looked curiously at the power of Shira manifesting in this way, while the Sea King seemed just to observe them, feeling the wrath of Poseidon, but just its presence agitated the sea so much that it made the island tremble. Calm down, Shira. Let me talk to your father, Luffy spoke calmly. As Shirahoshi heard this and began to calm down, with the Sea King finally leaving the island and disappearing into the middle of the sea, Neptune looked at his daughter cautiously. He had never imagined she could manifest the power she was born with in this way, something she couldn't do 6 months ago. Shirahoshi. He murmured as his gaze returned to Luffy, moving past his daughter. I did take your daughter, Neptune. I admit it, but I don't regret it, and she is an important crew member that I welcomed under my flag. I protected her in all possible ways and will continue to do so. If you think I touched your daughter, you are mistaken. Although she is of age, I respected her. Luffy began with his arms crossed, looking directly at Neptune. But you know what, since you are here, I'll be straightforward and declare one thing, Luffy continued as he spread his arms with everyone looking at him. I intend to marry Shirahoshi, she will be my wife. He said with his arms out before crossing them again as if he was stating the obvious and right thing. What? Shirahoshi's brothers immediately exclaimed. This is not how you ask someone to marry you. Nami, Vivi, Lami, and Reiju exclaimed with a grimace. Foo. Looks like we'll have a new sister, Robin commented. I don't know why you're all exclaiming, your marriage proposal wasn't normal either, Nojiko complained to Lami and Reiju. Luffy is so relentless. Usopp murmured. Right, Zoro? He looked to the side where Zoro should have been, but the spot was empty. Zoro disappeared. Chopper exclaimed. Wolf! Chaochu followed his scent and dashed through the streets past the fishmen looking for Zoro. Tisk! Enel just scoffed, uninterested in any of it, while Hugo had a neutral face. Kami, Papag, Hachi, and Jinbei had grimaces while snot dripped from their noses at Luffy's declaration. Besides the rest of the crew having various reactions, Neptune stood with his eyes and mouth wide open, a snot dripping from his nose. What did you say? He exclaimed, not believing those bold words. Luffy, what are you up to now? Ace exclaimed next to Whitebeard. The population also had shocked looks at this while all showed faces similar to Luffy's declaration. Wait, what? A collective scream was heard as both the pirates and the island's population yelled in astonishment. Shirahoshi immediately blushed, placing both hands on her cheeks. Luffy-sama, you shouldn't say something like that in front of everyone, but I accept, she said shyly in a tone of a truly infatuated woman. Once again, everyone was shocked. After all, Luffy had declared this to her father. It wasn't a request to the princess, but she accepted it in front of the entire island. Wait, what? Once again, everyone screamed. Gurararara. These kids know how to be reckless. Whitebeard laughed at that. Your brother really knows how to shock any place he goes. Ace, Jozu commented, looking a bit stunned since a wedding was the last thing they expected upon arriving at Fishman Island. While everyone was shocked by this, a mermaid looked around at others who seemed quite shocked by it, but unlike the group, she just maintained a small smile. So this is the famous monkey D. Luffy. Madame shyly murmured, looking at him with interest. After all, she still had her hands trembling with the vision she had that morning, a vision of the future where the entire world was at war, and that boy wearing the straw hat there was the man at the center of the war that would decide the fate of all inhabitants of this world. Though in the vision, the one wearing the hat was that sailor near them, with her having a different form in the vision, with white hair and quite shocking powers, and what Shirley saw was Lucy fighting alongside her brother. Chapter 346, Fishman Island 02. Third-person POV. Grand Line. Chaochu followed Zoro sent through the streets of Fishman Island while the locals stared at the strange creature curiously, as they had never seen a dog before in their lives. He continued down the streets until he reached the far end of the island, wondering how Zoro had ended up there, but what shocked the animal the most was that his scent ended at the bubble, making him wonder where Zoro had gone. Wolf! He started barking, but the only response from the other side of the bubble were the fish swimming at the bottom of the sea. With no choice left, Chaochu had to simply turn around before heading back to the group going to the square, unsuccessful in finding his companion. Deep under the sea, beneath the main island, the atmosphere wasn't at all pleasant or even shocking like above, since a group neither knew what was happening up at the port nor seemed very happy with the news that Whitebeard was still alive, which destroyed all their plans. How would they launch an attack on Ryugu Palace now? This is bad. Jones. Dosen spoke with a worried tone. Yes. Moreover, that man who defeated Arlong in the East Blue is extremely powerful. Can we handle him? Zio said with a somber tone. You saw what he did at Marineford, his crew is as powerful as him, besides. Daruma said before glancing at a corner. My Shirahoshi is back. But my powers no longer work on her. Deccan 9 started crying. Why are you so down? Just drink a bit and it'll pass. Hyuzu spoke while belching a bit from his bottle of rum. Hody Jones. Suddenly, a fishman entered the place with an urgent tone. What now? Hody Jones was already in a bad mood as he looked at the fishman. There's a human in the district. He exclaimed. A human? What is he doing here? Hody Jones couldn't help but be surprised. He's out there. The man pointed as they immediately went out to sea, while a group of fishermen who shared Hody Jones's ideology more than celebrating Whitebeard's return on the main island, stared, forming a crowd around that human, who was none other than Zoro himself. I feel so weak. Zoro murmured while he was in the middle of the sea, barely able to move in the water with Jeppo, feeling a great pressure on his powers. But he still managed to stay within the sea. Gosh! How can they get lost like this? Don't they have any sense of direction? Zoro murmured while his cheeks puffed up as he held his breath. He looked in front of him, a crowd was surrounding him at that moment while new fishmen approached him, looking at him with interest. Maybe they can help me. Zoro thought and started making signs. Hody Jones looked on, stepping in front of all his subordinates. What is he doing? A fishman asked as Zoro was making strange gestures, since he couldn't speak. I don't know, humans are so strange. Another fishman spoke. Hey! I know who he is. It's Roronoa Zoro. Daruma said, recalling that he saw the poster of the Straw Hat Pirates, a group they had been interested in since they knew they were with the Mermaid Princess with them after defeating Arlong. So he's the spacey one of their crew. Hyuzu seemed interested as he drank his alcohol underwater. Zoro continued making strange gestures at the bottom of the sea with a slightly tired face. Can anyone tell what he's saying? Ikaros much asked as he saw the human continuing to mime to everyone there. Let me see. A thunderous voice was heard at this moment, as the huge Watatsumi looked at Zoro with narrow eyes. Can you guys tell me how to get to the square of the island? Watatsumi spoke with a pause while trying to see each movement of Zoro and what he wanted to say. Square. He's talking about the main island. The fishmen soon became astounded by this, wondering if this man had some sort of directional problem. After all, the square of the island was on the island. I think this human is lost? One of the fishmen murmured. Humans are really inferior beings. Another mocked. Isn't this a chance to destroy the pirates who ruined Arlong? Another murmured. This sounds interesting, Hyuzu said, coughing drunkenly. Leave it to me? He spoke and grabbed his sword. Zoro looked at the fishman who suddenly moved, at high speed in the sea, but for Zoro, even weakened in the sea, he saw the swordsman coming in slow motion. What? Everyone exclaimed in the next moment as Zoro defeated the fishman with one strike, reappearing behind him while Hyuzu had white eyes with his blood streaming through the water as he floated defeated. That damn human! Let's defeat him! Other fishmen exclaimed as they prepared to attack Zoro. Then a fight began while Zoro did not understand why he was being attacked, but even with his face still tired, and holding his breath, he continued defending himself from the attacks of those fishmen as muffled explosions in the deep sea kept occurring around them. It didn't take long for structures in those districts to be destroyed, as new fishmen from there went to the site, looking stunned at the scene in front of them. What is this? They immediately exclaimed. How could this happen? Another spoke. Everything was destroyed, but not only that, Hody Jones and his main members were lying defeated, floating in the sea, while Watatsumi was now left lying on the ground atop the destroyed buildings, all of them beaten. Hody Jones. The new fishmen who shared his ideology about the fishman race being superior to surface species looked scared and went to help their leader. Meanwhile, Zoro continued jumping through the sea with a tired face holding his breath, until he saw something in front of him, the graveyard with the Noah's Ark and stuff. They don't seem to be here, but at least I could breathe a bit. Zoro concluded without thinking that looking up, he would see the island where his companions are. He was frustrated while his companions should be drinking sake at this moment. Which was true, after all, the main island square was having a huge party with all the inhabitants, as it was a feast that matched the whole kingdom, so it was not just held privately at the Ryugu Palace. Ha 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 ha. Come on, father-in-law, you can't be in such a bad mood at the banquet. Luffy exclaimed to Neptune, who looked angrily at him. You damn brat. You dare steal my beloved daughter and still want to marry her. Neptune spoke angrily. Straw Hat. The three brothers seemed to share their father's opinion as they looked at Luffy angrily. Luffy, you shouldn't provoke them like this. Nami approached Luffy while he was eating with Lucy and Ace, near Whitebeard. Baby 5 was feeding him. Don't be like that. He's my father-in-law, now we're family. Luffy said as he grabbed Nami, who let out a surprised scream and was pulled towards Luffy. Luffy? Nami exclaimed before receiving a joyful kiss from her husband. How dare you kiss another woman while you are trying to marry my daughter? Neptune shouted with red eyes. You damn! You're cheating on Shirahoshi! The brothers exclaimed to the future brother-in-law. Don't be mad, Dad. Luffy-sama has more than 10 wives. Shirahoshi approached drinking her juice. More than 10 wives? Neptune seemed to be having an attack at this moment as his head caught fire with anger. Tell me, my daughter. Has this human ever touched you? Because I swear. I'll kill him as soon as I hear anything like that. Neptune shouted angrily. No, Dad, though I wanted to know why Luffy-sama and the others made strange noises. They seemed to be having fun. Shirahoshi said with her hand on her chin, while both Neptune and his sons fell to the ground at that moment as if they had lost their souls. Dad-sama. Brothers-sama. Shirahoshi was extremely worried about them at that moment, not knowing why they were having this reaction. Gorarararara. These kids are fun. Whitebeard murmured, laughing. The square was full of people from all over the island, while the Neptune family had also provided food for everyone to also get involved in the celebration. Everyone seemed joyfully eating, while the main members were gathered in the center of the place, with Whitebeard, his companions and fleet, while Luffy and the others were beside. Lucy continued eating everything as her belly grew and grew. Hey, Lucy! You're eating my food! Ace exclaimed, frowning. Stop that, Sailor-san, another commander exclaimed as his food was stolen. Luffy, tell your sister to stop eating my food. Usopp exclaimed. My food is disappearing. Chopper shouted. Woof! Chaochu did not like a stretched hand stealing his piece of bone-in meat. Ace's sister is a friend, she can eat as much as she wants. Or said, his voice echoing through the square. He was already conscious, despite being bandaged and his leg still severed, but he let Lucy eat his food with a happy smile. Foo foo foo. Robin laughed. You dare to steal the food of a god? Enel complained and launched a bolt at Lucy. But as soon as the light from the bolt disappeared, Lucy was fine as if nothing had happened. Lucy, at this rate, you're going to finish off the banquet. Luffy exclaimed laughing. The banquet continued for the next few hours while the crew kept up their usual pace, until everything calmed down while only the pirates were no longer in the square. It's a shame we couldn't talk to him. One mermaid murmured. Stop that, you know he's engaged to Princess Shirahoshi, another mermaid spoke, but had a dreamy look like her friend. Can you two stop that, let them be? Madame Shirley said alongside, looking at her employees with disapproval. I wonder if he'll go to the mermaid cafe. That would be interesting, another mermaid murmured. I don't know, but now that the banquet is over, let's get back to work. Madame Shirley said eventually. Back at Ryugu Palace, the party continued while all the pirates went there as Shirahoshi seemed quite comfortable seeing the rooms of her castle after years locked in her room. It's so good to see my daughter not afraid to leave her room anymore. Neptune cried as he watched Shirahoshi looking curiously at all the places in her house. But that doesn't mean I'll let that damn human marry my daughter. Neptune concluded. So this is Neptune's palace. Hachi murmured. So big. Kami said excitedly. There must be many treasures here. Nami exclaimed with dollar signs in her eyes. Hey, can you stop that? Nojiko slapped Nami's head. Is there a dragon outside, can we beat it? Yamato asked curiously. You know that's a statue, right? Kuina said looking at Yamato as if she were a fool. Ow. Never thought I'd be here in my life. Papag exclaimed, raising his hands. Speaking of which, where is Luffy? Lucy asked, still eating. He went to talk to Pops about something. Ace replied beside her while also eating. After all, Lucy had finished all the food at the banquet in the square and they had to eat here. So, what did you want to talk to me about that needed to be private? Luffy asked looking at Whitebeard drinking his rum. This was a different situation from what happened on the boat. After all, here they had privacy, while Whitebeard needed to talk about the future of his children, since he didn't have much longer to live after the damage he suffered at Marineford. Chapter 347, Fishman Island 03. Third-person POV. Grand Line. You know. Whitebeard began. I won't be alive for much longer, he admitted. Luffy looked at him with a rather serious expression, nodding, understanding what the man meant by those words. Yes. He said. My family is not strong enough to defend against other Yonko, as you can see. I hope to have a powerful successor, but I haven't found anyone yet and believe that Ace would become that person, Whitebeard admitted while Luffy nodded. After all, he really saw Ace as his potential successor, even to the person who would find the One Piece hidden by his father and lead the battle that would involve the entire world. However, his death was approaching, and Luffy didn't know if Whitebeard still believed Ace would be that person. In fact, it wouldn't matter. Do you think everyone would follow me just like that? I doubt it, Luffy spoke immediately, reading Whitebeard's thoughts. I don't think so, but I fear for their lives when they try to defend my legacy with their current strength. He murmured. Unfortunately, that will happen, Whitebeard. But if they really want to join my flag, I will accept them, Luffy said. He would not deny these people, they were strong and reliable, at least more so than most of those Hachi mentioned when he went to Sabaody. The sea was infested with pirates looking for Luffy wanting to join his fleet. Luffy wanted to have an army, but not in that way. After all, he preferred quality, and these pirates were often just criminals looking to commit crimes under the shadows of a criminal flag. Whitebeard looked at him for a while and decided to continue. What are your plans for the new world? I plan to stay in paradise for another year since I will train and perfect everything I've learned. We will go to the New World as soon as this time passes and start conquering the islands of the New World by stealing them from the other Yonkos, Luffy said, smiling. You plan to start a fight against everyone at once? Whitebeard was surprised by this statement. Yes, I already have conflicts with Kaido and Big Mom, so I don't mind messing up the entire New World until I create my own territory before stealing all the red poneglyphs with the location of Laugh-Tale, Luffy said with confidence. Do you think you will be able to dominate this sea? Do you understand what it means to find Roger's secret? He asked with an intense look, and Luffy just smiled. I know very well, I've been preparing for this since I left East Blue. You can see, I have the most powerful crew of all because even if in my current state I can't reach the level of a Yonko, I have many companions who are on par with commanders and will be even stronger, Luffy said, clenching his fist. Before my powers return to me, I will be as strong as any Yonko just with my haki and physical body, Luffy declared. I even pondered giving you a beating. Gorararara. Arrogant brat. Very well, I would like to leave my territories under your flag, when I depart with my crew. In the end, Whitebeard spoke his thoughts. I will go to the New World in a year. I will be willing to take whoever wants from your crew if you are not alive by then, but try to stay alive, old man, Luffy said with a satisfied smile. Very well, if that guy conquers my territories by then, expel him from there as best as you can. Whitebeard didn't seem very confident he would live until then. Yes, Teach is someone I intend to give a beating to as soon as I see him, Luffy said. Gorararara. It seems this old man can finally rest, Whitebeard said with some satisfaction. Well, if you see Roger on the other side, tell him I will surpass him, Luffy said and began to get up. I will go talk to my crew, after all, there are still things I must do on this island. He began to walk away from Whitebeard after that, heading to the main part of the castle. Whitebeard was left alone, watching Luffy's back as he walked away. Tell Roger that he will surpass him. He thought of Luffy's words. Gorarararara. Could it really be him, Roger? Whitebeard couldn't help but comment in the end while sighing alone. He had to admit that he had little time left to live and was happy to spend it with his family, but he could also rest in peace knowing that his children would still have a powerful ally, and that if it depended on him, Luffy would have his territories and fleet as long as he could protect them. Luffy returned to the throne room, which was now infested with pirates. As he passed through, he was recognized and greeted with admiration, gratitude, and even fear by Whitebeard's fleet pirates and their captains, until he finally reached the person he wanted to talk to. Shira, Luffy called to the mermaid. Luffy-sama. Shirahoshi approached Luffy. Shall we go to your mother's grave now? I want to visit that place, Luffy said, while Shirahoshi's eyes lit up. Yes. Let's go, Luffy-sama. She seemed quite excited. Robin, come with us, Luffy also requested, and Robin approached, while Shirahoshi picked up the two before flying out of the room. Shirahoshi. Neptune saw that at the last moment and cried out, she doesn't even ask for her father's permission anymore. He complained, feeling his daughter had become quite rebellious. Luffy and the others left Ryugu Palace after putting a bubble around themselves to protect against the seawater while Shirahoshi quickly took them out of the royal area, crossing to the side of the island as they continued descending. Where could my mother's grave be? She asked, looking at the sea fungus. There, Robin commented, seeing a light coming from a forest, while Shirahoshi continued to approach. What is that giant ark? Robin commented, seeing the enormous ship beside it. This is Noah, Shirahoshi's vessel, Luffy commented. What? My vessel, I won't stay on the Black Pearl anymore? She exclaimed, horrified by that. You will, Shira, but this is a ship that only the kings of the sea can pull. You will command it one day, Luffy said, and they finally reached the location. Zoro is here. Luffy seemed shocked as he watched Shirahoshi pass through the bubble with Robin and himself. You finally stopped getting lost, he commented. Ha ha ha, Luffy laughed before mocking Zoro. You got lost, you idiot, you also missed all the loot from Ryugu Palace, he said. What? Zoro seemed shocked. Anyway, let's move on, there's a poneglyph here in Odoheim's grave, Luffy said, jumping off Shirahoshi's back and landing on the ground with Robin doing the same. This is the forest down here, it's as beautiful as the ones on the surface, Shirahoshi murmured until they finally found the grave. She stopped to pray for her mother while Luffy took Robin to the poneglyph nearby. Well, it seems it's as I thought. Luffy let his thoughts escape as he read the symbols. Wait, you know how to read this? Zoro asked, curious. Yes. For a long time, actually, I learned from Robin, he declared, approaching the stone and touching it. Luffy closed his eyes and waited for the voice of all things to say something, but all he could hear was a sound about a battle happening with explosions and screams. How strange. He murmured before losing the voice of the poneglyph, as he couldn't visualize anything else. Did you notice anything, Luffy? Robin asked, curious, knowing about the ability her husband had mentioned once, studying the poneglyphs he found in East Blue. Nothing much. Luffy commented while sighing, but Robin didn't stop her questions there. This poneglyph is different from the others. Joy Boy, who is he that you mentioned before? She asked, curious. She was happy to find another stone of her dream, but more doubts arose for her. Joy Boy is my sister, Luffy shrugged. Hey, what kind of answer is that? Zoro made a face, but Luffy didn't respond, his gaze returning to the stone. Here, Joy Boy would marry Poseidon, but it's her brother. Luffy smiled and turned back to Shira. Are you done? He asked, and Shirahoshi nodded with some tears in her eyes after finally seeing her mother's grave. Yes, Luffy-sama. She said with a tone of gratitude. This is good. It's time to liberate this island. This is a good opportunity, Luffy declared as his companions turned their gaze to the captain, curious about this, but Shirahoshi was the only one who understood those words. Yes. Luffy-sama. Shirahoshi said, grabbing her trident with a determined look. It was time for her to finally execute what she had agreed to in East Blue as soon as Luffy had included her in his crew. Although Luffy had expected Hody Jones to be stronger, since they had not yet stolen the royal treasure, without those drugs, they were extremely weak. But Luffy wanted to end this. If they did this a year from now, they would also be so strong that they would deal with them with the same ease as now. Hody Jones had just regained consciousness while his face was bruised and with a huge cut after facing the human swordsman, which had not ended well for him and his companions as the others were also getting up. Damn, how can he be so powerful? He wasn't a devil fruit user. How can he still be much stronger than a fishman in this place? Hody Jones muttered angrily while his companions remained silent, frustrated by the situation. More and more fishmen appeared until there were 10,000 of them, with Watatsumi still groaning from his injuries. That damn human! Some fishmen complained. He must not be far, let's call the Kraken. Hody Jones immediately said. Should we beat the drum? Underscore asked, surprised. Yes. Call him, he said as they prepared to finish off Zoro with hatred for the humiliation they had suffered from that human. It didn't take long for a huge horn to echo through the depths of the sea, and the next moment the sea seemed agitated as a huge shadow emerged, coming to the Fishman district below the island. Kraken, I want you to help me kill a human. Hody Jones spoke with a firm tone, while the Kraken seemed to nod. Now let's find the human, Hody Jones said as he prepared to go after Zoro, but at that moment, a huge shadow appeared above him. Then a sound exploded in the middle of the sea the next moment, SRRRUUUUUUMMMMMEE, an object at high speed traversed the sea and went straight for the Kraken before it could react, with the strange name. Luffy appeared in front of him inside his bubble on the Kraken's face, while his arm was coated with haki, and he punched the cheek, making it sink immediately as the Kraken fell knocked out backward. Sarum, I'm going to make you my pet. Luffy said excitedly as Shirahoshi flew to fight the 10,000 fishmen with her trident. Chapter 348, Fishman Island 04. Third-person POV. Grand Line. The sea churned at the bottom of the island as Sarum fell, struck down by a haki-coated punch from Luffy. Even without his Akuma no Miz, he was extremely powerful for a rookie. The Kraken was knocked out before he could look ahead, seeing his attacker right in front of him. He immediately glared angrily. I've decided, you will be my Kraken, a pirate needs one, Luffy declared with a smile. Immediately, the mythical creature began sending its tentacles at Luffy, who started dodging them easily as he bounced from side to side with Jeppo. The Kraken was surprised again as Luffy appeared in front of him after zigzagging to his head, where he struck him once more. But Luffy resolved to end this as he knocked out the giant creature, with it falling to the ocean floor. What? The nearby merfolk were already stunned to see someone punching the Kraken, but seeing him knocked out with a second blow left them bewildered. "It's him! It's Straw Hat!" they exclaimed, now recognizing who had done this. "That damn human!" Hody Jones was frustrated, watching the situation, wanting to kill him, but he also knew that this man was a monster. "Hey, what is that?" A merman pointed upwards, as a shadow approached in front of the sky's light. "A giant mermaid? Is it King Neptune?" they exclaimed, thinking it might be Neptune due to his size and trident, but as the person appeared, revealing a feminine figure. "Is that Princess Shirahoshi? What is she doing here?" "Shirahoshi!" Vanderdecken 9 exclaimed, eyes wide, seeing the princess he always wanted to marry, to the point of threatening her and making her stay locked in her room, but for some reason, he had lost his ability with her after hearing she had disappeared and the country was put on alert. Shirahoshi approached the crowd while Zoro and Robin stayed back. "Luffy wants to catch another animal?" Zoro asked curiously. "Fufufu, where will he put this one? It seems this one lives under the sea," Robin commented. Shirahoshi looked at the crowd looking at the group of fishmen stopping some distance from them. "You want to cause chaos on the island of the merfolk, don't you? Luffy-sama that you try to coup in the future," she said calmly. You figured it out," Hody commented, looking interested. He wouldn't deny it if they found out. "We are superior to humans. Neptune's management is weak, we must dominate the surface," Hody declared firmly as everyone agreed. "Then I must fight you," Shirahoshi said with an even firmer tone. "Shirahoshi, marry me," Vanderdecken 9 shouted from the side. "I can't, I'm going to marry Luffy-sama," Shirahoshi exclaimed. "What?" Vanderdecken 9 exclaimed, not believing those words. "Finish her," Hody exclaimed as his soldiers moved into fighting position. "Leave it to me," Watatsumi exclaimed, stepping in front of Shirahoshi. "Sorry, Mermaid-san," he said, clenching his fist before launching it at Shirahoshi. Shirahoshi watched calmly, before swinging her tail and disappearing, then appearing in front of the giant who was still moving his arm to punch. In the next moment, Watatsumi's cheek buried as he was sent flying backward with force by the hockey punch, making the man fall to the ground crying out as buildings were destroyed and some merfolk were crushed by his immense body falling far away. "Ah!" The merfolk screamed in desperation as they were crushed and sent flying. "What? She's that strong?" they exclaimed, stunned. Hody clenched his teeth. "Attack her!" Hody exclaimed as several of his members began advancing through the sea. Seeing this, Shirahoshi began moving at high speed, disappearing and reappearing beside them as she sliced through the sea with her trident and launched water strikes. Even as they also launched strikes with merfolk karate, they couldn't compare to Shirahoshi's attack, which caused the sea to churn the next moment as a giant wave appeared, devastating the whole area. "She's very strong, Mr. Jones," a merman exclaimed, looking bewildered at the scene. "So this is the strength of the princess, she even surpasses Jimbei." Hody was frustrated for not having his pills he planned to take. "Mr. Jones," a merman exclaimed to a huge shadow emerging, as Shirahoshi became a giant creature at that moment. Finally, Leviathan appeared in its serpent form while looking at the 10,000 mermen who maintained stunned looks at the transformed mermaid princess, something they had not seen in the war. "Hey, she can transform into that thing? What is it?" the merman exclaimed, stunned. She was as big as the Kraken, over 100 meters long, as she looked at her opponents and roared, making the entire sea tremble. All 10,000 mermen looked on fearfully, shielding themselves from the water crashing against them. "Can we fight against this thing?" the merman murmured. Hody Jones, equally frustrated, saw that they could not win. "We must escape from here. We cannot fight her, let alone with Straw Hat and the members of the Whitebeard crew on the island," he murmured, seeing that this was a disadvantageous fight for them and they would have to escape to try to deal with them another way or when the pirates were no longer on the island. However, Leviathan began to glow at this moment with a blue hue, and the sea began to get all agitated as Shirahoshi released her power. Luffy was next to Sarun when he saw the entire sea turning strange. Amazing, she is so powerful within the sea, Luffy murmured, seeing the true ability of Shirahoshi in her domain. Besides being able to control the entire sea with her icon, she also had control of the Sea Kings, making her practically invincible underwater. He had to admit with some admiration for his companion. Suddenly, everything began to stir, and water hurricanes started to emerge all over the sea, rising upwards. This affected not only the district but also the entire island began to feel it, trembling with huge hurricanes emerging from outside the bubble as everyone still celebrating at the feast looked stunned. Hey, what's going on there? The residents were scared by this as they saw chaos making the bubble start to shake as if it would burst at any moment. Even Neptune came out of his palace along with other pirate members, who were there looking equally stunned at this. Unaware that his daughter was producing all this. Meanwhile, in the midst of the chaos, the hurricanes continued to swirl through the sea and the mermen looked scared at this, not knowing how to act. "We must flee immediately," they exclaimed as they prepared to leave. However, the glow from Leviathan grew even stronger and launched its attack, while all the hurricanes began to be directed towards the crowd of mermen. The sound echoed throughout the sea, and even the sea on the surface became agitated by this, but the whole place at the bottom of the sea began to be devastated as mermen were thrown far away with the impact. Even Zoro and Robin at a distance had to protect themselves from it. From a distance, Luffy saw various rocks flying towards his direction while Sarun was behind him. Sarun suddenly woke up stunned with the sea and the ground being devastated, as he saw various rocks flying towards him, but the human who had hit him began to move, breaking all the huge rocks with a hockey-coated punch, protecting him. A cloud of dust was launched in the next moment covering the seabed rising upwards, as people could finally see the direction from where the chaos began with the sea beginning to calm down. When Zoro and Robin finally managed to see through it, a huge hole appeared in front of everyone. The entire district was no more, while thousands of bodies were floating in the sea, knocked out. "Well, she ended that pretty quickly," Luffy murmured as he no longer needed to punch rocks at the bottom of the sea, protecting his pet. Leviathan saw the result of the attack and transformed back into its original form, looking at it curiously. "Did I overdo it?" Shirahoshi murmured. "Hey, that was quite surprising," Robin approached Shirahoshi. "Thank you, Robin-sama," she smiled, pleased by the compliment that she was finally strong. "That was really surprising." Zoro murmured, looking cautiously at the being who could devastate an entire city and defeat more than 10,000 opponents in just one strike. Luffy smiled at them from a distance, then turned his attention to Sarun, who was awake. He approached his slightly bruised face and crossed his arms. "Sarun, now you will belong to the Straw Hat crew," Luffy declared. As Luffy continued trying to convince Sarun to join his fleet, a group of Neptune's soldiers quickly approached the scene with the king himself, concerned about what had happened. "Shirahoshi!" Neptune exclaimed as he approached his daughter. "What happened here?" he asked worriedly. "Daddy, I finished off the bad men," she spoke in a timid tone. "What do you mean, you did this?" He was stunned, not knowing about Shirahoshi's transformation, and believed it could be the Sea Kings. "Let me explain, father-in-law." Luffy stepped forward at this moment. After having talked a bit with Sarun and convinced him to be a member of the fleet, he could explain the situation better than Shirahoshi. Despite some veins growing on his forehead from being called father-in-law, Neptune stayed silent, waiting for Luffy to speak. Luffy ended up explaining the situation, and in the end, he made a statement about Otoheim. "It was Hody Jones who killed your wife," he said, as Neptune's eyes widened. "What are you saying?" he murmured. "Hody Jones is a cancer to the island. While your wife believed in the coexistence of humans and merfolk, he was an antagonist. He wanted the opposite. He wanted the merfolk to go to war against humans and for them to dominate the surface, believing that his race is superior. It seems like a foolish dream. After all, merfolk are very few compared to humans on the surface, and much weaker than the major forces," Luffy scoffed, not intending to offend Neptune, but it was true. However, they wanted to use the power of Shirahoshi, which could balance the forces, Luffy added at the end. Neptune was furious. "Are you sure it was him who killed Otoheim?" he exclaimed, seeking an answer, and Luffy pointed to Shirahoshi. She saw everything, he said finally as he looked at his daughter. Why did you never tell me this? Her father said, demanding an explanation immediately. It's because Mom didn't want more conflict, so I ended up hiding it. She commented, though she had been cowardly at that time, but she would no longer be so. Neptune, despite his anger, nodded. I want all of them arrested, he exclaimed to his soldiers, as they began to head to the bottom of the sea to collect the fallen bodies. I want Hody Jones and his group personally to be tried. Well, that was quite easy, Luffy murmured, with the threat of the Merfolk Island being so easily destroyed with just one strike from Shirahoshi. In the end, Shirahoshi, Zoro, and Robin went to the Ryugu Palace, and Luffy said they would be free to do as they pleased while he ended up going to the Merfolk Island, wanting to visit the place alone. Chapter 349, Fishman Island 05. Third-person POV. Grand Line. Luffy walked around the island after landing, observing it for the first time. The people still seemed frightened by the chaos caused by Shirahoshi's power. People started to notice him as he strolled through the streets lined with houses resembling corals. It's very beautiful down here, Luffy had to admit. He ignored the gossip being stirred up about him as he approached a well-known place. So this is one of the iconic places of this world, Luffy murmured, looking at the sign at the entrance. He then decided to enter, opening its doors while there seemed to be little activity at the entrance since people were still celebrating Whitebird's return, but the place was also open so he saw no reason not to continue. His entrance caught the attention of some mermaids who were in the place. A customer. One mermaid murmured in surprise. Luffy stared and noticed 4 mermaids working there, cleaning the tables after people had been celebrating all day before their arrival. Wait! This is Straw Hat-san. One quickly noticed. Hello, mermaid. Can I serve myself here? Luffy asked curiously as the other mermaids recognized him. Of course. I will tell Madame Shirley that Monkey D. Luffy is here. One of the mermaids spoke as she left the area. Well, can you bring me some drinks? Luffy asked as he reached the counter, while the mermaids quickly brought things for him, slightly blushing. We have aquatic lemon juice, Mujiwara-san. We also have coral milkshake. Do you want some sea tea? Luffy looked at those 3 cups with a not-so-pleased face and immediately refused. Sorry, but what I want is alcohol. Give me your best rum, Luffy said. The 3 mermaids looked at each other and went to fetch his alcohol. So he's here, Madame Shirley said with interest as she walked through the doors to see Monkey D. Luffy drinking alcohol, surrounded by 3 mermaids hugging him. You are so strong, Luffy-san. I was all emotional when you entered the war. One mermaid spoke while rubbing against Luffy's arm. You really are brave, you even killed a Tenryubito in front of the whole world. I've never seen anything like it. Another mermaid spoke in Luffy's lap. You truly are a hero, to think that Uncle Whitebeard would come out alive from that war. A third mermaid murmured as she kissed Luffy on the cheek. You're exaggerating, I just did what I should for my brother, Luffy said before smiling and drinking his alcohol. Don't you agree, Madame Shirley? Luffy looked at the large mermaid watching. Can you let our customer breathe a little? She approached, asking the other mermaids, as they quickly ran away from Luffy with blushing faces while they seemed to behave. This is not very good behavior while this man is the fiancé of the princess, as you know, Madame Shirley said with a stern tone, making the mermaids a bit embarrassed. Anyway, forget that. Madame Shirley, if you're here, it's an honor to meet the seer of the Mermaid Island. Luffy smiled at the woman after drinking more from his bottle. You seem to know me, Madame Shirley said calmly, looking at the pirate with interest. Of course, you are Arlong's sister, Luffy commented calmly, setting a somewhat hostile mood. Well, you could say that. I heard one of your companions killed him, Madame Shirley said. Yes, you could also say he caused his own death. He was enslaving humans in the East Blue for over a decade, Luffy murmured before returning to his drink. I can't deny he had a deserved end, that fool chose his hatred and it spread to some places on the island. She commented, and Luffy nodded. Yes. But that's also settled, my princess ended them. You must have heard the explosions and how the sea was agitated. It was the cleansing, and I fear to say that the mermaid district no longer exists. Luffy commented. Yes. I already knew about that. She said at the end. Now tell me, for you being here, did you see anything in the future? I'm not going to destroy the mermaid island or anything, am I? Luffy asked curiously. No. She said with a raised eyebrow. I didn't see anything about your future if that's what you're asking. She spoke at the end. Luffy looked at her for a moment, knowing she was lying, but he didn't mind as long as she didn't freak out saying he would destroy the island. Anyway, I want to enjoy this place, Luffy said, and the mermaid nodded. The Straw Hats soon began to spread out as everyone started to leave Ryugu Palace and also began enjoying the island. Usopp. They have a picture of a milkshake. Chopper shouted, looking at the mermaid cafe. Let's go in and see what they have. Usopp exclaimed excitedly as he entered. Customer-san? A single mermaid greeted them before recognizing their identities. You are friends of Luffy-senpai. The mermaid exclaimed as she approached. Have you seen Luffy? Chopper exclaimed, not having seen his captain for the last few hours. He's there, behind the cafe in the VIP area, the mermaid said. Do you want to see him? Yes. Show us the way, Usopp said as the mermaid nodded and led them behind the mermaid cafe. When they arrived, they encountered a strange scene. Luffy was inside a coral pool drinking, surrounded by more than 20 bikini-clad mermaids. Nothing explicit was happening, but he was clearly enjoying himself surrounded by so many women in bikinis with fish tails. Luffy is living the dream of anyone from this world. Usopp exclaimed, dazed. What? Where? Chopper, too innocent to understand what he was referring to, was looking for something tasty that Luffy must have been eating. Luffy looked over with a smile. You guys are here, folks. Luffy smiled at them while continuing to enjoy the small paradise of beautiful mermaids. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the island, Lami was competing in something with Reiju, while Nami, Vivi, Alvita, Nojiko, and Kuina went out to shop on the island. Some stayed in the palace while others went to different places on the island. Luffy was again walking through the island streets, heading towards the harbor, noticing an increase in ships coming from the surface, a quite obvious reaction with many pirates wanting to reach the New World after the great loss of the navy. He saw some familiar flags, and he would speak to them later, but first focused on his ship. As he approached, no one neared the Black Pearl and the others. There were guards keeping watch as they did on Whitebeard's pirate ships. He passed easily, being well known, and boarded the ship while he was alone. Entering it, he went straight to the prison, filled with 10 Ryubitos. Everyone there immediately saw the door opening, especially the celestial dragons who grimaced with hatred at Luffy. Hey, you damn inferior being, one shouted but couldn't continue, as Luffy's wave of haki covered the entire place, leaving only 2 people standing. Page 1 maintained a cautious look at Luffy but was thankful he had knocked down those idiots who had been screaming the whole time about getting revenge when they had the chance. But Luffy wasn't interested in him, but rather in Chief Jailer Domino, whom he had taken from Impel Down. The woman looked at him with a dark tone but was surprised when he simply opened her cell. Come with me, you're tired of staying here, how about you come along? Luffy smiled. Why are you doing this? She asked with a cautious tone. I decided you'll be a member of my fleet, Luffy said. He hadn't intended to take this woman before, but not wanting her to get hurt as the only woman in the prison rebellion, he ended up bringing her on the ship as well. And if I refuse? She said, not wanting to associate with a pirate. You can choose that, then you can leave, but do you really want to go back to Impel Down? Living there is a bit sad. Luffy spoke with a smile. But you can also work for me. You can get strong. So you decide, Luffy said, turning to leave. Hey, wait. Page 1 murmured. Speak, Luffy looked at him. Can't you get me out of here? He asked. I could, but you'll have to swear loyalty to my flag. Otherwise, you're just to trade with Kaido. Luffy said. Page 1 was silent but conflicted. Luffy saw this and started to leave the ship. He couldn't help but smile as Domino followed him. I see you've decided. No. I just don't know what to do yet, she said with a stern tone. Luffy didn't care and was about to leave the ship when he felt his Den Den Mushi ring. He saw it was Yuta. Luffy? She said with an urgent tone. Did something happen? Luffy asked, his eyebrow raised by the tone of her voice. Some prisoners that Beepo brought, they've escaped from prison. She said. Who? Luffy kept his voice calm, despite the surprise, wanting to understand the situation first while Domino remained silent beside him. It's Cracker and Reiju's family, they've escaped and caused some chaos. They're far from here, we can't stop them, Yuta spoke. That's kind of bad. I'll stay here a bit longer before heading to Skypiea with the crew, just let me know if something like this happens again, Luffy said and hung up the Den Den Mushi. Well, you see why I need a jailer, Miss Domino? Luffy looked at her, although he didn't like the news, there wasn't much he could do since he was far from Skypiea now. Domino said nothing, and Luffy continued to exit the ship, with the woman following him. But as they reached the port, there was a crowd of people being held back by the guards. Look, it's him. A pirate said. Luffy-sama. Hire me. Let me join your crew. Let's dominate this era together, accept me into your fleet. I want to be a member of the Yonko without territories. A crowd of people were all gathered while shouting at Luffy, who scratched his head at this, somewhat surprised by this reception seeing Neptune's guards not letting them pass. Sorry folks. Luffy began to speak to them. But I'm not interested, he said, leaving everyone surprised, as he had once thought, it was a bunch of criminals looking for a powerful flag to continue committing crimes. The next moment, he released his haki, catching everyone off guard as they fell to the ground, surprising the guards, while Domino had already seen this in the prison more than once. Luffy looked at a group behind the crowd of pirates as he approached with a smile. Kid, Killer, Basil Hawkins, Beej, X-Drake, Apo, Urage, were there and he released another burst of Conqueror's haki at them, catching them off guard. His haki was much more powerful than what they had seen in Sabaody, making them feel a mountain on top of them as he put pressure on them. All the 7 rookies with bounties above 100 million soon began to fall to their knees. I know you're interested in seeing how powerful I am, so I'll give you a taste, Luffy declared with a smile, increasing the pressure even more. What? Everyone was surprised as they fell further, unable to move, and some looked at Luffy in fear as he released haki all around that area of the island, with everyone there stunned by the event. Luffy continued pressing them not to intimidate them, but for them to see how strong they would need to be if they wanted to reach the top of the New World. Kid clenched his teeth at this. I won't let you humiliate me. Kid exclaimed, releasing his own Conqueror's haki for the first time in his life, against his, though it was like a child trying to fight an adult. Luffy stopped releasing his haki and opened a satisfied smile at this. Ha ha ha. That's what I wanted to see, very good. I hope we meet again, and that you be a powerful challenge in those waters, Luffy declared as everyone looked at him cautiously. Anyway, where's Bonnie? Luffy asked. She stayed in Sabaody. Hawkins responded, and Luffy nodded to that. It seems the girl had accepted his proposal and he would return to the island to pick her up. Great, see you then. Don't let any pirates get close to my ship, Luffy spoke to the guards still dazed in the middle of the fallen, fainted crowd. He looked at Domino. Let's go to Ryugu Palace, after all, there's a trial happening, Luffy said, as Holy Jones and the others would be tried by King Neptune. Chapter 350, Fishman Island 06. Third-person POV. Fishman Island. Luffy returned to the Ryugu Castle with Domino. As he entered the throne room, where Neptune was at that moment beside all his 4 children judging Hody Jones and Vanderdecken 9, both handcuffed and still quite battered from Shirahoshi's attack. You are accused of murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, and treason against the island of the Fishmen, Neptune began, showing a tone clearly unsatisfied with the situation. Big deal, Neptune. You listen too much to that foolish wife, leading us down an unworthy path. while we have to kneel to the humans on the surface?" Hody Jones openly mocked. In the room, Luffy stood at a distance, not getting too involved in the discussion and the trial. Present were Whitebeard himself and some of his crew members like Marco and others, along with members of the Straw Hat crew, listening to the entire trial, such as Robin, Jinbei, and Shirahoshi. The comment from Hody Jones quickly enraged Neptune, as he pointed his trident at Hody Jones with fury. "Dare to speak of Otoheim once more and I will execute you right here," he said with a bloodthirsty glint in his eyes. "Fine words for a man who needs humans for everything. You are weak, Neptune, and—" Hody Jones said fearlessly. He would accept his death quietly, while still defending his beliefs to the end. "To think things have come to this point," Jinbei murmured. He felt responsible for everything that was happening. After all, he let Arlong go after taking him out of Impeldown, where he ended up doing horrible things after talking with Nami about her life in East Blue. Beside Hody Jones, Vanderdecken 9 was crying. "I just wanted to marry Princess Shirahoshi," Vanderdecken 9 said immediately, looking at the princess. "I did all this for love," he complained, while everyone looked at him like an idiot. "I already have a fiancé," Shirahoshi said calmly, as the man had received a knife hitting his heart. Neptune, tired of this, already gave his verdict wanting to end this. "Anyway, I sentence you to death for all your crimes," he exclaimed, while none of the jurors from the island of Tritons denied it, since Shirahoshi had given her testimony against Hody Jones seeing him murder her mother. As for Vanderdecken 9, not much was needed to condemn him after years of throwing things at Shirahoshi. Luffy was just looking from a distance and finally approached. The first thing he went to see was the whale with a crown on its head standing in a corner, drawing the attention of others at that moment. "Hey, whale," he called out, while the whale looked at him curiously. "Do you by any chance want to join my crew?" he asked, as the whale became more confused by that. "Huh? What are you doing?" Neptune immediately exclaimed from his throne, seeing Luffy asking such a question to his loyal companion. "Ho! This is the damn thing. You already want to steal my companion, besides having taken my daughter?" Neptune was scowling at Luffy. "Don't be like that, father-in-law," Luffy said, approaching them. "I don't force anyone, but if he wants, he can come," Luffy said, flashing a smile at Shirahoshi, completely ignoring Neptune. "Don't call me father-in-law, damn it!" Neptune exclaimed again with another grimace. Gorarara, Whitebeard laughed at that, having remained silent the entire time. "Anyway, since we are on the island of Tritons," Luffy said, turning back to Neptune. "Let's finish this and let's prepare the wedding with my future wife," he declared, knowing that Shirahoshi would wish to marry here, with her family rather than in Skypiea. "Who said you're going to marry her?" Both Neptune and his other 3 children shouted at Luffy. "So sudden. I haven't even put on a dress yet." Shirahoshi shyly listened to those words. "Don't agree with him." The 4 family members shouted at her while she continued to timidly place her hand on her face, while Luffy didn't care about the Neptune family's anger. Neptune's face changed from enraged to one of defeat a moment later as he remained silent. He was in a place with several people at this moment, wearing a suit next to Shirahoshi in a white dress. The wedding had been initiated in the island square while the closest family members were there, and the rest of the island was around the square with many people on the upper part watching the royal wedding. Neptune had no choice but to walk his daughter down the aisle in front of the entire island. While he did not look very pleased, Luffy was at the altar while Neptune's minister of the left, who would be officiating, stood in front of Luffy. Shirahoshi looked quite excited, unlike her family, while her brothers near the altar seemed to share their father's situation. With no choice, Neptune walked his daughter up to Luffy. "I'm going to kill this human," Neptune exclaimed, clenching his fists angrily as he lost his precious daughter. Ignoring this, the minister began the wedding vows. "Do you take this mermaid as your future wife and will be with her until death do you part?" the minister asked Luffy, who nodded while wearing a black suit. "Yes," he replied with a smile. The minister of the left turned back to the giant mermaid. "Do you take this human as your husband?" he asked Shirahoshi, who nodded timidly. "Yes," she declared with a small smile to Luffy. "Both have consented. Now I ask you, is there anyone against this marriage? Speak now or forever hold your peace." the minister of the left said to the entire island. I object. I object. I object. I object. The only ones who exclaimed were Neptune and his 3 children. The minister of the left nodded to that. As no one has spoken up, he began. Hey, don't ignore me. Neptune and your 3 sons shouted, but the minister continued. Then I declare you husband and wife, he spoke in the end. Shirahoshi ended up grabbing Luffy with her hands. He felt strange with it, but had no other choice as he was kissed by that mouth larger than his entire head. With that, the wedding was complete. While Neptune and his children cried, Luffy and Shirahoshi entered a carriage that took them back to Ryugu Palace. The people of Fishman Island were celebrating while clapping for the newlyweds. Seeing the kingdom's princess marrying a human was a big step towards the goal of the late Queen Otoheim, sealing a pact that humans and fishmen could finally unite. Even members of the worst generation that Luffy had met before were present while keeping to their own thoughts. A few days passed and Luffy woke up in a giant bed with him and all his wives, including Shirahoshi, while she occupied most of the bed. Luffy opened his eyes and left before anyone woke up, and walked around the castle until he saw one of his crewmates alone sitting drinking. He ended up joining him. You didn't find your room and spent the night here, did you? Luffy approached. You're saying I got lost? Of course not. Zoro complained while Luffy shook his head, seeing that was indeed the reason. Pass me the sake. Luffy sat next to the swordsman and started to drink his sake with him. So, Captain, what's your plan now that the whole world is paying attention to us? Zoro ended up asking Luffy, who smiled before answering. I want you guys to stay here for a bit. I'm going with the Whitebeard fleet to the New World. I'm going to do some important things and want you guys to meet me in Sabaody after I cross the red line. Luffy instructed. What do you plan to do in the New World? You said we would train a bit more before entering those waters. Do we need that? Zoro asked, given his strength in Marineford. We are strong enough to compete for territories in the New World, but we are still novices with just a few months at sea. I want us to be more prepared when we invade the New World, Luffy said, maintaining a gleam in his eye. As soon as we get there, I want to dominate all the territories. And we will do it without any problems. After all, if we face the Yonkou, we might even win a victory here and there. However, the world government will spare no effort to destroy us and instigate these fights to try to catch us, Luffy spoke, drinking some liquor to get rid of the hangover. So we'll have to deal with pirates and the world government at the same time. Zoro murmured, a glint of challenge in his eyes, but he understood his captain's reasoning. After all, they could receive attacks from all sides. Yes, it's time for us to dominate the seas. This year of training will give us enough power for that. I no longer possess the power of my devil fruits, but that's also good, Luffy said. After all, I don't want to rely too much on my fruits, since not everything is based on fruits. They are just a support. The base strength and haki is what dominates everything. I was lucky in fighting Saturn, but I doubt I could maintain that state fighting against the other elders at the same time. I have to be strong enough to face them and even worse things. Luffy continued and drank some more. Not just that, he would also have to worry about the kingdoms that were his territories. Most of them were already under his name, under his flag. He could say that East Blue belonged to him, however, it still lacked military power. As much as, in these months, all the kingdoms where he had placed instructions were starting to create armies, it still wasn't enough. He needed weapons and good material, so he bought Wapple's fruit to build a powerful metal and create a weapon factory in Skypiea. He already had an idea of who might consume it. In the end, a few more days of celebrations happened in the palace, while Luffy socialized more with the members of the Whitebeard crew and spent time with his brothers, reminiscing about the past. So, when will we see Sabo? Lucy commented, looking at the fish outside the palace, feeling quite excited about this future meeting. Soon, Luffy commented. I'm excited to see him again and to think that he was alive all this time, Ace murmured with an excited look, having revealed the brother he thought had been dead since Alabasta. Yes, I'm sure that you will find him first before us, Ace. After all, I doubt he'll stay put after knowing the truth and will probably look for the Whitebeard crew, Luffy commented and looked at his brothers. How about we reminisce about old times with some sake, like when we did our ritual to become brothers? Luffy said, and both nodded as he grabbed some sake. Although Lucy was the only one who didn't like alcohol, she still enjoyed the moment. A moment later, all three brothers were drinking, like when they were just kids in the Goa Kingdom, in the middle of that forest with almost no one knowing of their existence, while they were nobodies, and now, their names echoed around the entire world at this moment, as a new era was arising. After that, Luffy went to talk with his crew. Lucy accompanied him too, as she was now part of the Straw Hats. It was time for Luffy to talk about his plans. So, we're meeting on Sabayati Island today, right? Nojiko asked. Yes, there are people to pick up there, and also Rayleigh will go with us to Skypiea. After we return, we will train for 1 year isolated from the world. I'm sure the genetically modified monsters by Shiki's scientist will be our training base during that period, Luffy said, as everyone nodded. You're not going to pick up more women in the new world, are you? Nami murmured, crossing her arms and giving Luffy a hawkish look. What is this? You think I pick up women everywhere? Luffy mocked. You already picked up one in Impel Down, she pointed to Domino, who was standing by. He just laughed. Anyway, I'll be going. I'll get in touch with you, Luffy said, ignoring the accusation. In the end, the Whitebeard pirates began to head back to the port, while Luffy went to the Moby Dick, hitching a ride. Whitebeard said goodbye to Neptune and the others. Hey, don't forget to pick up the Flying Dutchman, that ship is important for my ship collection. Luffy exclaimed and looked at Neptune. Goodbye, father-in-law, he said while Neptune cursed him. In the end, Whitebeard boarded the ship and thus the fleet began to depart, returning to the New World. Come on, men. Let's return to the New World as heroes and clean up all the mess those damn Yonkou made in our territories. We'll also teach everyone a lesson. Newgate declared, while all the pirates alongside Luffy began to shout. Luffy remained calm, but also excited to finally enter those waters for the first time. Chapter 351, Punk Hazard 01. Third-person POV. New World. In the midst of a stormy sea, with huge waves continuously crashing against each other amid heavy rain and lightning, ships began to appear. The first was the Moby Dick, followed by 20 more trailing behind, heading back to the New World. We are here again. The members of the Whitebeard pirates maintained a satisfied look, surveying the tumultuous waters. Bubbles burst from the Moby Dick, and more coatings exploded from the other ships until the entire fleet was finally ready to sail towards their territories. The rain and lightning continued to pour down from the sky, lighting up the entire area. Luffy gazed with a bit of admiration at the chaotic scene before him. He and his crew would navigate these waters in the future, but he certainly already had a taste of this sea until the Black Pearl sailed here. Beside him, Ace approached. Are you already scared of navigating the New World, Luffy? He teased with the question. Do you think I'm scared of this place? I'm just excited because I've officially come to the sea. I will conquer the whole New World, Ace. Remember that. Luffy retorted, mocking his brother's provocation. Arrogant as always, aren't you, Luffy? Ace murmured, but soon smiled. Anyway, we'll be waiting for that. Are you going already? He asked. Luffy nodded, looking into the darkness of the night, raising an arm and looking at his wrist. Yes, Ace. I need to do some things and it has to be somewhat quick. He lowered his arm and looked in a certain direction. After all, many forces are in motion now. Probably this organization I'm targeting must be in chaos with the death of their leader. I need to hurry to execute my plan. Luffy then turned his attention to the other crew members, with them watching him at that moment. So you're leaving, Straw Hat? Marco asked with a friendly smile. Looks like we won't see each other soon, Vista spoke. It's a shame we can't exchange a few blows, since I wanted to see the skills of the one who possesses the sword of the ancient king of pirates, he commented. In the future, we will have a chance, Luffy said. Anyway, thank you for your help, Monkey D. Luffy. I'm sure that we got out of Marineford so well thanks to your crew, Jozu acknowledged. Luffy nodded, turning his attention to Whitebeard. Goodbye, kid. Good luck, and when you return to these waters in the future, make your nom, he said. Luffy nodded. You can count on it, Whitebeard. I hope to find you strong and healthy still, you hear me? Luffy spoke smiling. They looked at each other with some respect. Truthfully, Luffy didn't believe he would meet him again and this would probably be their last meeting, but without saying anything more, he turned around. Good luck, Straw Hat, Marco said. Thank you. Ace's brother, see you. Get back to the ship when you can, we'll have a feast, the Whitebeard crew exclaimed cheerfully. You are our friend, visit when you can, various exclamations came from the pirates of the divisions. Luffy nodded. He liked these people and now Whitebeard would have a chance to live a little longer with his family. Putting that aside, Luffy bent his knees on the ship's deck and exploded into the air, flying with Jeppo. Quickly approaching the dark clouds in the sky, and looking at his wrist where there were 3 eternal pose, he chose one specifically before sensing its magnetic field and moving in that direction, bursting through the air, slicing through the rain and dodging falling lightning at that moment. The Whitebeard crew watched as Luffy disappeared into the horizon. Hope to see him soon, Marco commented. Yes, Luffy will be here with his crew soon. So, we can't fall behind. I'll get so strong that I'll kick his ass when I see him, Ace said with a challenging smile. Well, men, let's move forward now. After all, we have our territories to reach and see the chaos they made in them, Whitebeard said and everyone nodded. Finally, they began to move forward. Luffy continued to navigate through the storm until he spotted an island in the distance. With a Jeppo, it didn't take long for him to finally see it, as it was enveloped by toxic smoke. This was Punk Hazard, moments before the fight between Akiji and Akainu, with the island serving as a major government research base where Dr. Vegapunk worked on research for the government. Luffy believed the accident was caused by his assistant, Caesar Clown. The island was uninhabitable. Dr. Vegapunk had moved to Egghead and Caesar had secretly reactivated the abandoned base and started his Smile project with Doflamingo. Luffy was after Caesar, so he decided to capture him. Moreover, there was a fruit on this island that interested him, wanting to obtain it for the person he believed was most suited for it. As soon as he arrived above the island, Luffy removed a mask from the system. He might not have his Akuma no Mi, but he still had the system with many credits he had acquired in recent days. He even convinced Neptune to give him a dowry. After placing the mask on his face, he advanced onto the island. Meanwhile, Caesar Clown was quite agitated as an assistant helped him pack everything up. They had to leave the laboratory by order of their new leader. The Don Quixote pirates had affiliated themselves with the Beast Pirates for protection, as without Doflamingo, they would be doomed to destruction with so many enemies they had acquired, and without Joker, the underworld would also be in chaos. It was at that moment that an explosion occurred, shaking the entire station, with Caesar and Monet immediately looking towards the source of the sound. What's happening? Caesar exclaimed with a look of fear. We should find out, Dr. Caesar, Monet said in her white lab coat, not yet having her modifications, just an ordinary woman. Meanwhile, at one of the entrances, Luffy entered the laboratory in a suit sealed against the poisonous gas. After blowing up the entrance with a punch, he picked up the dented door and put it back where he had taken it from, although it no longer covered everything, with some poisonous gas leaking through the gaps. Luffy started walking, even with the poison entering the base. He knew he had time to do everything he needed before leaving there, so he pressed on. He also quickly sensed the presence of everything in that base. There were many artificial fruits there along with Caesar and his assistant. It seemed that no one else was there, so the children were not used by Caesar yet at this time. He continued cutting through the corridors until he entered a large space leading to the center of the base. His haki showed 2 presences coming towards him through the corridor ahead. Caesar flew in his gaseous form and finally encountered Luffy in the corridor, stopping in front of him angrily, with Monet appearing below him. Caesar's angry look quickly turned to astonishment with a grimace. After all, who in the world didn't know Monkey D. Luffy at that moment? What are you doing here? Caesar exclaimed in fear. I'm here to rob you, Luffy said with a smile. And before Caesar could say anything more, Luffy was already in front of him. He simply clenched his fist with haki and struck him in the face, making Caesar fly a considerable distance, with blood spraying in the air from his broken nose, before he collapsed defeated on one side of the corridor. Meanwhile, Monet immediately stepped back, with Luffy landing in front of her, looking at her with interest. So it seems that what was expected is happening. The Don Quixote pirates are acting.
I would like to understand the situation now that Doflamingo is dead, Luffy said calmly.
Monet couldn't act while she transformed into snow, but Luffy hit her on the head, causing her to faint.
So easy to deal with them, Luffy commented, looking at the two fallen on the ground. Anyway, he said, taking some handcuffs from the system and placing them on Monet, then moving towards Caesar. Caesar opened his eyes a moment later and was stunned as he saw Luffy staring at him with handcuffs placed on his arm.
Hey, what are you doing? Do you know who I am?
I am the greatest scientist of all, he exclaimed immediately.
You really are a good scientist, which is why I will be capturing you.
I'll need your help in my plans. Luffy did not hide his greed. Caesar would be very useful.
Caesar, trying to maintain his pride, now understood why Luffy was there.
He valued his abilities, and this immediately made him fearful that he was about to be used by another pirate.
Wait, you can't do this. We are directly affiliated with Kaido and the Beast Pirates.
Caesar tried to argue, but Luffy just laughed.
That doesn't matter, since we will take down Kaido in the future, so you will come with me anyway,
he said before slapping Caesar again, making him truly faint this time. Luffy made sure they would stay locked up and left them there while he entered a base and quickly began to explore the whole place. There was a smile factory and a reasonable stock of artificial fruits, but his real interest was in the junkyard of the place. As he was at its entrance, he blew up the place, entering the junk dump and walked through it until he found a pink fruit. This fruit was an experiment classified as a failure by the world government when Dr. Vegapunk was working here, trying to develop an artificial fruit for Kaido. However, in the tests, it was deemed a disposable experiment, making the world government very disappointed, as they had spent many resources on this project. In the end, after that, Caesar went mad and caused the incident that led to the chaos the island is in today.
Failed experiment? What foolishness!
Luffy murmured, looking at the fruit in his hand.
Momonosuke had managed to transform into a giant dragon, though not as large as Kaido. After all, this fruit is inferior to the Uo no Mi model, Sarayu, a dragon fish.
But still, it gives more power than most fruits. Satisfied, Luffy stored the fruit as he left the place, going to other areas to steal some money and take the resources. He could put Caesar's treasures with his money in the system, but since he didn't have his Moa no Mi at the moment, he would have to carry the other things he picked up at the base. He was not interested in the fruits, so he decided to destroy them, along with the whole laboratory. But just as he was about to start, he felt a presence entering the base through another of the large laboratory's entrances.
Look what we have here, a vice admiral of the Navy.
Luffy murmured and opened a smile, giving up his move as he walked towards the entrance.
A man with a bamboo, wearing navy robes, walked in, surprised to see Caesar and Monet handcuffed in the middle of the corridor.
Luffy approached along the corridor, while his steps echoed through the place.
"Hello, Vice Admiral Virgo," he commented calmly, appearing in front of the man. Chapter 352, Punk Hazard 02. Third-person POV. New World. I'm going to handle something.
Vice Admiral Virgo stepped out of his office and notified the men of G5, who looked more like bandits than Navy soldiers, saluting the Vice Admiral who stayed in the New World to protect them while the rest of the Navy fought against the Whitebeard pirates. The New World was a chaos, unsurprisingly, and Virgo was trying to keep the sea controlled, dispatching soldiers and ships to manage those regions. He had been in touch with Dressrosa while they reported on the path the Don Quixote family would take. Thirsty for revenge to kill those who caused Doflamingo's death, Virgo ended up agreeing to affiliate with Kaido. He received the latest updates on the plans and decided to head to Punk Hazard with a ship to escort Caesar to Wano to work with Queen in the land of the samurai's factories.
Vice Admiral Virgo is leaving.
Where is he going? The sea is a chaos, with a growing number of pirates emerging. As they complained, Virgo kept leaving without caring about the comments. He simply left the base and flew into the air with Jeppo, as he advanced towards a ship from Dressrosa on the sea heading to Punk Hazard.
He arrived at the ship a moment later and everyone greeted him. "Virgo, it's been a long time since I've seen you."
A man with spiky hair crossed his arms.
"Yes."
Virgo was terse. He was not in a good mood, as everyone was mourning the fall of their former boss. The ship continued sailing until Punk Hazard finally appeared to them, while Virgo left the ship to meet Caesar and Monet, but as soon as he walked through the doors where he had access and encountered the two tied up with sea stone, and with their mouths shut.
"What's going on here?"
he murmured, looking at Caesar, trying to speak to him, but with an incomprehensible voice. But in the next moment, his attention was drawn to the corridor ahead, when he heard footsteps approaching, and from one of the corridors, a person emerged walking calmly towards him. Virgo looked at Luffy behind his glasses with a quite bewildered expression, seeing one of the people he and his family wanted to destroy, there in front of him.
"Vice Admiral Virgo. So you're here." Luffy spoke with a smile. "Mugiwara."
Virgo murmured with a dark tone despite keeping serious.
"It's good to see a dog of Doflamingo here too."
"I had the desire to kill him, but my partner got there first, not that I can blame her, since my wife would be very sad if I took her goal of revenge."
Luffy started calmly.
Virgo looked at him, unstartled that Luffy knew about his affiliation with the Don Quixote pirates, as he tested himself, burning with rage inside, so much that he couldn't hold back anymore and exploded the floor, passing through Caesar and Monet, ready to kill the Straw Hat. The reports indicate that Monkey D. Luffy could no longer use the abilities of his fruits at the end of the war. This is the chance to kill him when there seems to be no one else from his crew here, Virgo thought as he approached Luffy with his still open smile. Luffy saw the man raise his staff as he moved towards him. Luffy quickly drew his sword at the last second, clashing against the weapon with haki and generating a wave of yellow lightning. Virgo clenched his teeth, seeing that Luffy was truly powerful with haki, trying to put as much power into his haki, but Luffy had evolved even further with basic haki and began to cut through Virgo's haki.
"You really are a powerful haki user, Virgo, but your limit is just the basic form," Luffy taunted, slicing through the bamboo.
Virgo felt his arm being severed from his body the next moment. Before he could react, with blood spreading around, with Caesar and Monet watching this scene stunned and with a glint of fear, Luffy moved and punched him in the chest. Virgo put his arm in front to protect himself from the attack, unable to properly react to Luffy's attack, and his body flew backwards, breaking the walls of the laboratory in a straight line. Virgo was not having an easy time as he felt the pain of losing an arm. He tried to stand firm so as not to break the other with a punch from Luffy, which made him break all the walls until stopping in the 8th room after that punch, finally falling to the ground with some debris falling on him. He was a bit breathless and growled, feeling immense pain. He tried to lift his head and, the next moment, Luffy appeared in front of him, trying to punch him once more. Virgo quickly used sorrow to move away, but Luffy reappeared by his side the next moment.
"You are slow,"
Luffy commented, delivering another punch to Virgo, who flew into the wall, exploding again. Luffy looked to that side of the wall and began walking forward, raising an eyebrow, with Virgo finally reacting, flying towards him, transformed all in armament haki. Even with just one arm, Virgo did not seem to give up, at a disadvantage, trying to hit Luffy, who quickly put his hand in front, waiting to see the strength of the opponent as he was dragged a few meters back, but nothing compared to what he did to Virgo, not even passing 5 meters. "Interesting," Luffy murmured and sheathed his sword while his arms transformed, coated in haki, getting ready to fight. He flew the next moment towards Virgo. Meanwhile, Caesar and Monet could only hear the explosions while the whole place trembled with the intense battle in the next moments. "They are destroying my entire laboratory," Caesar complained with his muffled voice, as he could not speak with his mouth gagged with a rope.
Monet was frightened seeing Virgo's arm fallen on the ground in front of them.
The explosions continued until Virgo, again, flew into that room, hitting against the wall, cracking it. He tried to stay standing, but he was all bruised. Even with his whole body wrapped in haki, blood was spread all over the place. He had his arm broken, his ribs, and his organs were all damaged. Even his glasses had already fallen off, leaving him in a deplorable state. Luffy burst through the wall he came from, while approaching calmly, looking at the man mockingly. "I thought you would be a greater challenge, but you are too weak," Luffy commented. Despite having faced several vice admirals and used just haki in the 6 styles to defeat many of them in the war, he expected more from Virgo, since he was a challenge for Trafalgar Law in the original. Luffy, sighing, decided to finish this. He simply removed his sword again from its sheath and showed it to Virgo, who could only look at it now without being able to do much. Virgo was without his weapon and his whole body was broken. The only thing he could maintain was his haki, but it was also already at its limit after just a few blows from Luffy.
Luffy didn't care.
He turned his body as he placed his sword behind him. It began to glow with red lightning. Preparing to make his move, he then spun quickly, releasing his attack. At the last millisecond, Virgo, even with a broken arm, put his hand in his pocket and was cut the next moment. Monet and Caesar, who were crouched on the ground, saw the blow passing over their heads. "Hey, what's going on up there?" one of the Don Quixote family members asked curiously, hearing the explosions coming from the large mountain on Punk Hazard Island, not understanding what was happening there.
"Who knows?
Maybe Virgo was annoyed with Monet or something," another man spoke. But then, the next moment, a huge lightning strike in the shape of a cut emerged from the mountain and went in all directions of the island, piercing all the other peaks of the island as they were cut along that line. The lightning passed over the ship, generating wind, with the members only able to protect themselves by putting their hands in front. "Hey, what was that?" The lackeys of the Don Quixote pirates quickly ducked in fear, as Gladius looked with narrowed eyes, wondering what was happening and looking up at the sky. "Hey, look there," a man pointed to the island again.
"What?" others exclaimed.
The next moment, everyone was looking at the mountain from where that cut with electricity came out, seeing it fly in half with the Smile Factory being cut by Luffy's sword, which made a 360 degrees movement. Everything turned into chaos after that in the laboratory. Explosions began to emerge all over the place, while Caesar and Monet were in the middle of it all, with the former screaming desperately, not wanting to die or complaining about the destruction of his laboratory. The mountain began to fly over the laboratory, while falling down, creating a cataclysm on the island with explosions and tremors. Luffy saw this with satisfaction, as the Smile Factory was destroyed with this movement, with Virgo being cut. He looked ahead, where there was Virgo, with half of his body cut. Unlike what happened with Law, Virgo was really cut and his life was quickly ending as he couldn't react while having only half of his body. Luffy raised an eyebrow, seeing him with a look of despair holding a Den Den mushi that he had pulled from his pocket before Luffy cut him.
"Vice Admiral Virgo, are you there?"
A female voice continued calling from the Den Den mushi.
"What is all this noise? Where are you and what is happening?"
"Monkey D. Luffy," Virgo murmured as he was dying, still managing to speak in his last moments. "He killed me at Punk Hazard," he said, dropping the Den Den mushi the next moment, while Virgo looked at the now open sky.
"Soon I'll be meeting you, Doflamingo."
He couldn't help but murmur, and Luffy raised an eyebrow at that.
This guy is certainly loyal.
He couldn't help feeling a bit of admiration for the man as he died.
"Vice Admiral Virgo, Vice Admiral Virgo?"
The voice on the fallen female Den Den mushi kept calling. "He's dead," Luffy decided to speak as the woman on the other end of the line opened her eyes and was stunned before glaring with hatred.
"You are Monkey D. Luffy, aren't you? You think you can get away with all this?"
"You will face the justice of the Navy and pay for all your crimes," she exclaimed angrily. "If you knew this person, you wouldn't speak like that," Luffy commented.
"After all, he works for Kaido."
Luffy replied with the obvious, but looked one last time at the Den Den mushi that had a beauty mark below the mouth and smiled.
"Goodbye, Vice Admiral Guion,"
Luffy said, and turned off the Den Den mushi. He wasn't interested in continuing to talk to that woman, despite thinking she was one of the most beautiful in the Navy.
"Anyway, let's deal with the lackeys now."
Luffy looked down at the ship on the island, while he had an idea. After all, his next target was Dressrosa, and he didn't want to be carrying Monet and Caesar to the place. So, he would leave them there for a few days. He quickly moved to grab both his prisoners and headed towards the ship of the Don Quixote family men.
Chapter 353, Viola Princess. Third-person POV. New World.
The entire ship was on its knees at this moment. Even Gladius was on the ground, staring fearfully at Luffy.
"So I'm leaving these two with you.
I want you to sail calmly in the middle of the sea until I return, and just to be sure, I'm making a Viva card of Gladius and Caesar. After all, I can't let them go, otherwise, I'll have to kill them." Luffy spoke calmly as all the Don Quixote minions trembled on the ground, and Gladius was not much different. As angry as he was at the Straw Hats, he cared more about his life than the feeling of revenge, and now knew that Virgo had been brutally killed. How could he deal with someone who cut a
mountain with a whole laboratory not long ago?
Luffy nodded, seeing the silence and the fear in their eyes, and grabbed the two prisoners and threw them in the middle of the deck. "I'm going to do something important at sea at this moment, so it's better you do exactly as I said." after all, I don't want to kill you, Luffy said with a very firm tone, while everyone felt fear, with Caesar being the most fearful, starting to cry wanting to wake up from this nightmare. Luffy approached the frightened Caesar and took one of his hairs and did the same with Gladius. While doing what he learned with Yamato during their travels, Luffy was not just a captain who gave orders and planned the future of the crew, but also lived learning things with his companions, whether making Vivre card with Yamato, learning to read poneglyphs with Robin, feeling the weather with Nami, and learning to be a better swordsman with Stealing or a better shooter with Usopp. After that, Luffy smiled at everyone. I'm leaving, see you in about 2 days. Goodbye, Luffy said and disappeared the next moment, flying high, leaving Punk Hazard behind, while following the path to Dressrosa with his second eternal pose of the three on his arm, disappearing into the middle of the sky. Dressrosa is known as the land of fairies, the land of romances and passion. While countless toys walked through all the streets of the city, couples met and kissed, while some toys seemed enraged with them, but they didn't care. This is terrible. Treble shouted quickly in a meeting where the crew members gathered there to discuss urgent matters, and this time it was a very delicate issue. After all, there was a Vivre card starting to disappear while burning quickly in front of everyone. Virgo is dying. Diamante was shocked by this. After all, Virgo was one of the elite members and there were only 4 of them, being Treble, Pika, Diamante himself, and Virgo, with the latter about to die. He was in Punk Hazard to escort Dr. Caesar Crown to Wano. Something happened, Pika said in his thin tone. The other members also looked around with tense and fearful glances. We should call Gladius, he must know what's going on, he said, and they tried to make a call, but the Den Den Mushi wasn't working. After all, Luffy made sure to remove all of them from the ship as soon as he left. Buffalo, go there immediately, Pika exclaimed while he nodded immediately, leaving through the window. Viola, I want to know about anything suspicious that might show up here, you understand? Treble said, and Viola in a corner nodded. Viola was quite confused. It seemed that all Joker's allies were turning against him and his family was not managing the situation. Even with Kaido's name on them, some forces didn't seem to care, not believing that the family would continue with their arms sales as they had provided before. The meeting began and many members began to cry with the fall of Virgo as his paper disappeared completely, showing that he died. Viola spent a day thinking about what to do, and when she went to her room the next day planning to see her niece at the Colosseum today, since this kingdom belonged to Kaido now, she feared for her father's death. She needed to find a way to keep him safe. But as soon as she reached the door, she immediately opened her eyes with her X-ray vision, while she was paralyzed, debating whether to open the doorknob or not. In the end, she nervously opened the door with the room appearing to her while there was a man near the window looking at the kingdom. I was wondering how long you would stand at the door, and for a moment I thought you were going to call the rest of the Don Quixote family. Princess Viola, Luffy commented calmly without turning to the woman. Monkey D, Luffy. You are here, Viola murmured. Yes. I came here from Punk Hazard, Luffy spoke as Viola opened her eyes at that moment. So you? She asked, shocked. If I killed Virgo and captured Caesar Crown? Yes, Luffy admitted. Viola was still quite surprised by this, and she almost wanted to know the intentions of this man as she began to activate her eyes. If you try to read my mind, I won't be kind at all, Princess of Dressrosa, Luffy immediately warned. He did not want someone reading his mind. Exclamation point. Viola quickly deactivated her eyes to not enrage the pirate in front of her. But what do you want? What are you doing here? She asked cautiously. You want this country to be free again. I heard it's now Kaido's territory, Luffy said. Yes, it belongs to Kaido. Are you planning to take him down? Viola asked. Luffy had beaten Kaido in the war, so she was thinking that he really could defeat him. I plan to take him down, but not now, Luffy said. But? Viola, with a glint of hope to see this kingdom finally free, insisted, but Luffy shook his head. I know you want to take this kingdom out of the beast pirates' hands as soon as possible. And I could even free them, by going into the factory and beating up that brat who turns people into toys. Luffy finally turned to Viola. But I won't be at sea next year, so even if I defeat the Don Quixote family here, Kaido will send forces and I can't be here. Luffy spoke. He had no plans yet to go into a war now, waiting for his entire crew to be ready for such a thing. Viola didn't know what to say about this, but still, she looked at Luffy with some hope. But you will come to this country in the future then, you will go to war with Kaido? She asked as Luffy shook his head. But what do you plan, why do you want to help Dressrosa? Viola couldn't help asking, it was strange Luffy's actions or why he was here to talk to her after everything. I intend to make this place my territory, but I won't govern it, I'll leave that to your father, putting him back on the throne again and restoring the royal family's name again, Luffy commented. Viola wasn't so surprised by the first statement, after all, Luffy wouldn't help them for nothing, but the second part left her eyes shining with hope. She was ready to beg him to do just that no matter the cost, as long as he saved her father.
Thank you, she murmured in the end while looking at Luffy with a glow of admiration.
It's alright, after all, I don't want to be the ruler of countries with my flag, but that doesn't mean I don't have norms and I plan to call them at a time to fight with me, but I am just, all the kingdoms with me, are growing very well, Luffy said, and Viola was surprised by this information.
You have territories? She couldn't help but ask. Luffy just smiled, I've been conquering territories ever since I set out to sea, he said.
I know I'm known around the world as the Yonko without territory, actually, I'm quite surprised with the newspapers talking about me here. Luffy pointed to a newspaper on Viola's headboard, which she had received a few days ago. It was Luffy's bounty and his crew with new reports.
Besides,
he continued while pointing to the wall with a photo of his bounty and several articles about him kept under the bed.
Didn't know I had a fan in this place, he said, making Viola immediately open her eyes with this. This isn't what you're thinking,
she replied with a somewhat desperate tone, while turning red with embarrassment at this moment. It's okay, let's just say you're no stalker, he replied with a smile while the woman seemed to get even redder with that.
I'm no stalker, Viola murmured. Anyway,
I didn't come here just to talk about some of my plans, Luffy began as Viola tried to regain her composure to listen to him. What you want, if you are fair, the royal family will be grateful and follow you, Viola replied. I plan to have Lami free this country while she kills Doflamingo. But as you can see, she did it herself in the war and Doflamingo was dead, so I thought of another way to fight for this country, since just coming here and defeating all the remaining members of Joker is too easy.
Luffy said, not wanting to do everything alone. What's the concept of a crew then? I want one person to do this. He spoke in the end. One person? Viola didn't know what Luffy was talking about.
I want Princess Rebecca, I came here to pick her up, Luffy said.
Rebecca? Viola was surprised by this. Yes, my intentions are not bad, but I want to recruit her into my crew and give her the strength to free the country.
Luffy said, he always had in mind the ideal crew to conquer the seas and handpicked his future crew members. Rebecca was always someone he intended to have as well.
You intend to do this? Viola was somewhat suspicious of Luffy's actions, even a bit jealous that it wasn't her he was looking for his crew. Luffy guessed what she was thinking. Your skills are very useful, and I plan to make use of them in the future, but now you need to stay in the kingdom. To keep it, after all, the people of Dressrosa still need to see the royal family on this land. I don't believe anything will happen to Dressrosa this year, just keep things as they are. When we act it will be quick and to the point, the Don Quixote family will be destroyed and Dressrosa will be safe while we are in this sea, Luffy spoke. Yes, but what do you intend to do with my niece?
Viola began to understand Luffy's reasoning, but still didn't understand how he would make Rebecca as strong as he claims.
See this fruit? Luffy showed the pink fruit to Viola. It's a replica of Kaido's fruit, although not perfect, it is still very similar, Luffy declared while Viola was shocked by this information. Really? This fruit is like that of the Yonko? She murmured.
Yes, anyway, take this, Luffy handed a Den Mushi to Viola. If everything is working as usual, avoid contacting, but if something happens, call me, Luffy requested, and Viola stepped forward, taking the Den Mushi before looking at Luffy gratefully.
Thank you, she couldn't help but murmur with a blush. It's okay, Rebecca is in the arena and they are having games today. Luffy looked back out, towards the Colosseum in the middle of the city.
Yes, members of the Don Quixote family are trying to keep order in the kingdom and believe that keeping people busy fighting will work, Viola responded while Luffy nodded.
Alright, I will take Rebecca to get her out of the kingdom.
You don't need to lie when they ask who attacked the Colosseum, but keep it discreet and contact me if something happens to you or Dressrosa, Luffy requested.
Yes, Viola responded in the same tone as before. Anyway, I'm going.
I need to save a princess while she is forced to wear erotic clothes in front of the whole kingdom. That's too disgusting, Luffy spoke with some disdain.
Viola just looked at him as Luffy merely smiled. See you later.
I hope we meet soon, Princess Viola, he said before jumping into the air out of the window and flying towards the Colosseum as fast as he could. Viola continued to look at Luffy disappearing with her own thoughts, while placing the Den Den mushi she received on her right chest with quite conflicting thoughts while keeping the image of Luffy in her mind with a blush on her face.
Chapter 354, Rebecca Princess. Third-person POV. New World.
Let's start another round of the next fight, the announcer shouted, hoping for another day of the tournament despite Dressrosa being quite agitated lately.
Still, the Colosseum was open to everyone in the kingdom while they seemed to enjoy it.
Two men in armor, one 7 meters tall and the other 4 meters, began a fight while citizens and toys continued to scream, seeming to forget that their king had been killed over a week ago. Meanwhile, no one noticed something coming towards the Colosseum from the royal castle at high speed, creating a huge impact in the middle of the place the next moment. The Colosseum shook at this moment with the impact.
What is happening here?
An attack on the Colosseum, the announcer shouted as the bikini-clad women beside him put their hands on their faces, worried. The crowd in the stands showed expressions of fear, while the two gladiators stopped their fight to see what was happening. Meanwhile, inside the Colosseum, debris flew in all directions, with several gladiators who had not yet entered the arena looking horrified at the destruction of the place next to them. The Colosseum was fortified so no one could leave, but here it was being destroyed, as a shadow began to emerge from the wreckage, moving into the place.
Who is this?
A gladiator asked, raising his sword with some fear.
An enemy of Doflamingo taking advantage of his death, another expressed his thoughts.
We should call the Don Quixote family, a guard exclaimed as the shadow finally came out of the wreckage while Luffy wore his usual casual clothes, his hat showing his symbol.
Wait. This is...
All the gladiators immediately recognized who this person was.
He is Monkey D. Luffy. A Yonkou. The one who is captain of the woman who killed Doflamingo. He killed a Gorosei, one of the people who rule the world. Fought against Garp, Sengoku, 3 admirals, and even hit Kaido. Everyone immediately became shocked by who was in front of them, feeling very afraid and immediately backing away. He has a bounty of 3.5 billion berries, another exclaimed, trembling. Luffy continued walking, listening to the comments while cracking a small smile. But the next moment, he released his haki, making everyone in that place fall to the ground. Luffy saw everyone collapsing, except for one person he excluded from his haki as soon as he felt her. Rebecca was in a corner wearing classic clothes that showed most of her body like a kind of bikini, something used to ridicule her while turning the princess of the kingdom into being exposed like a prostitute. She was surprised by the explosion and heard everyone exclaiming Luffy's name as soon as she appeared. She wasn't sure how to act, though she was grateful for Straw Hat beating and humiliating Doflamingo while that Lamy killed him in the war. She didn't know why this powerful pirate was here and her first thought was to run from there, but as she was about to take the first step, a powerful wind swept through the place and the next moment she saw the crowd falling to the ground with white eyes and open mouths, fainted instantly. She saw this in the war shown on the screen and she took a step back with so much fear and it reached its peak when Monkey D. Luffy stared at her from that distance with a smile. Why is he looking at me? Rebecca murmured as she raised her sword against Luffy, waiting for him to make a move. Rebecca, Luffy said calmly as he began to walk towards her. How do you know who I am? What do you want? Rebecca kept her sword as she began to tremble. She knew she couldn't handle this man. I know who you are because I came looking for you and I want to take you from here. Luffy replied calmly. Exclamation point. This caught Rebecca by surprise as she narrowed her eyes trying to look at him with courage. What do you mean by that? Simple. I'm here to take you, I want to make you stronger. Do you want to be free, want a free Dressrosa? Luffy asked calmly. Make stronger. Freedom. She murmured a bit confused by these words. I have a proposal for you, I want you in my crew.
I wish to make you so strong that in 1 year, you will return and almost destroy the entire Don Quixote family and free Dressrosa, and I will go to war against Kaido, but I want you to follow me until the end of my journey.
Luffy gave her his proposal.
Rebecca had stunned eyes, almost dizzy from hearing this. She could never have imagined receiving such a proposal as Luffy walked up to a few meters from her.
Are you serious? She murmured. Yes, I just spoke with your aunt and I know she is watching us from the castle right now. I want to free you and restore the Riku family, with your grandfather returning as king and you receiving the title of Princess of Dressrosa along with your aunt, and not living in this humiliating way. You want a better life, so I want you by my side. Luffy spoke as Rebecca was left speechless, looking at Luffy. Rebecca, despite having many sympathizers, was still ostracized. Everyone laughed at her and made malicious comments, constantly living in humiliation. She had never been touched, as her aunt would never allow such a thing to happen, but even so, for a 14-year-old teenager, this was a cruel life. Everyone had fierce voices against the Riku family and took it out on her and her grandfather, who often came to the Colosseum. Now she was hearing something from a stranger she never imagined, saying he would take her away and make her strong, her family and her country would be saved by her. This caught her by surprise, and as someone living this kind of life, she always clung to anything that gave her hope, even suffering in the Colosseum. She wanted to become strong enough to have killed Doflamingo and free her aunt and grandfather from the clutches of their enemies. That's why at that moment, she started to tear up, looking at Luffy as tears began to fall. Really? Do you think I can become strong enough to free this country? Do you want to take me with you? She asked as tears started to fall.
Yes, we'll spend 1 year away training and I want to recruit you to my crew. Although you will become a pirate, you are not the first princess in my crew. Vivi, the princess of Alabasta, and Shirahoshi, the mermaid princess, are with me and have become powerful women, although today they are also my wives. Luffy murmured at the end, and hearing this, Rebecca blushed, but looked at Luffy with hope. She didn't know why, but she felt she could trust this man. Be careful, Rebecca, a voice emerged at this moment, and a toy soldier in dark and red clothes with only one leg, using a type of toy weapon, jumped and stood in front of Rebecca and Luffy.
Toy-san.
She was surprised by this. The toy soldier seemed to look at Luffy unafraid, and Luffy looked at him with interest. Don't trust what this pirate is saying, you don't know him to believe in his words, he said firmly. So you appeared, Luffy commented, looking at Kairos calmly. Sorry, Toy-san, but I will accept Monkey D. Luffy's proposal. Rebecca spoke and Luffy was surprised with the system putting her as an official member. I've never had such a quick acceptance in the crew, Luffy commented internally, quite pleased. But the same could not be said of the toy, who looked at Rebecca stunned. Don't do it, Rebecca, he exclaimed, but Rebecca shook her head. I will believe in him, he defeated Doflamingo once and I will do anything to become stronger, she said determinedly. As the toy soldier was about to try to convince Rebecca not to agree to this, because it was very suspicious for one of the world's greatest pirates to appear at this moment, and wanting to take Rebecca, saying he will train her, as a father, he didn't trust Luffy at all with this attitude, even though he is an
enemy of the Don Quixote family.
I'm not surprised by this, toy soldier, Luffy interrupted before continuing. She is your daughter, so I understand your concern, Luffy admitted, catching both the toy soldier and Rebecca looking at Luffy confused.
What do you mean by that? Mr. Luffy? Rebecca asked, bewildered.
Do you know who I am? The soldier exclaimed, stunned. After all, even the Don Quixote family doesn't know about him, with everyone forgetting his existence as soon as he turned into a toy.
Yes.
You are Kairos, married to Princess Scarlet, mother of Rebecca, and she is your daughter, that's why you always accompany her, Luffy spoke.
Wait, father. I have a father?
Rebecca couldn't be more stunned as she looked at Luffy and the supposed father who had been accompanying her for years while helping her train, but she had never imagined that he would be her father. Yes, the toy in front of you is your father, his name is Kairos, the one you treat as a legend when you see his statue in the arena. He is your father transformed by a devil fruit user, and that makes you forget his existence too. I am the only one who really knows who he is, Luffy said, and at that moment, Rebecca was completely taken aback. She had always heard about the statue of Kairos in the middle of the Colosseum, symbolizing a legendary gladiator that existed, but no one remembered him, like a true legend.
Is this really true? She murmured while even Kairos didn't know what to say. Let's leave this reunion for later, we have to get out of Dressrosa. I'll take you with me, and if you want to come along, feel free, Luffy said, not wanting to separate the father from the daughter. They didn't even know how to respond to what they had just heard, and Luffy just sighed as he appeared next to Rebecca, grabbed her by the waist and the toy soldier by the arm, and began to leave before anyone could react, through the hole he had created. As soon as they left, a sword appeared in front of them, as Diamante tried to cut him at that moment, but Luffy maneuvered carrying the two by his side and dodged the attack as Diamante appeared in front of him. Mugiwara! Diamante exclaimed with hatred, ready to launch another attack. Hey, Rebecca, grab your father, I need a free hand, Luffy exclaimed and threw the toy to the girl who caught him, while he advanced towards the high-ranking man from the Don Quixote family. Once again the sword tried to attack him, but making curves in the air with Geppo and Saru, Luffy surprised Diamante, as he delivered a punch to his face, making the makeup-clad man fly backwards, hitting against a building in the city. One down, now the other, Luffy commented as the city transformed in front of him with a giant of houses and rocks emerging. Mugiwara! Pika exclaimed, only 20 meters tall, while Luffy puffed his cheeks. Ha 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 ha! Look at your voice, Pika, I didn't know it was so funny. Luffy exclaimed, unable to stop laughing at the giant, while the toy soldier continued to be held by Rebecca, watching everything here without being able to react properly due to Luffy's incredible speed. You bastard! Pika tried to hit him with a punch. Ha 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 ha! Take that, Pika! Ha 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 ha! Luffy continued laughing and went straight into his punch, hitting it, still laughing. The next moment, the two fists collided, but Luffy didn't give his opponent a chance as his haki was much more powerful, making Pika's fist explode, and Luffy took this opportunity to take off into the sky with Rebecca and the soldier, leaving Dressrosa in chaos with this little fight. Luffy treated them like children, but it wasn't the time for them to interfere with Dressrosa. Chapter 355, Returning to Paradise. Third-person POV. New World. Mr. Luffy, I am a bit tired, Rebecca's voice sounded from behind Luffy as she clung tightly to his neck. With a soldier behind her, the girl had a slight blush on her face. Luffy nodded, understanding that this girl, who had been traveling through the night, was exhausted and needed some rest. All right, let's find a ship, Luffy said and continued across the open sea. They spotted a pirate ship in a corner and advanced towards it in the next moment. Let's choose an island to replenish our supplies before going further into the sea, the captain with a 40 million berries bounty exclaimed as his crew raised their weapons. This ship belonged to a pirate group that had just entered the New World, deciding to sail these waters after the battle in a strong manner, excited to conquer their own territories and make their name in this new era. However, they did not expect an object at high speed to explode from the sky onto the deck, sinking the ship in the next moment. As the ship returned to normal while rocking uncontrollably, the pirates quickly panicked, with most of them falling to the ground unbalanced by the impact. What is that? Enemy attack. Where is it? The pirates quickly exclaimed various words in fear, looking for any ship that might have fired that cannonball at them. Wait, there's someone there, someone shouted, pointing a finger at the explosion, seeing a shadow emerging from the debris of the wood. As Luffy stepped out from that spot, he appeared in front of them, staring them down. All the men quickly raised their swords at him with a look of caution and anger for invading their ship. Rebecca was already on the ground, approaching him cautiously, waiting for Luffy to deal with the pirates. It was then that the pirates finally realized who was in front of them with his distinctive face and straw hat. Many began to tremble immediately. That's Monkey D. Luffy, the Yonko without territories, the pirate with a bounty of 3,500,000,000 berries. Quickly, exclamations were heard as Luffy scratched his nose, bored with this new way people had of reacting to him now. Drop your weapons. Do you think we can fight him? The captain quickly shouted, making all his men drop their swords, not wanting to present a threat to this monster. As the captain rubbed his hands, he approached Luffy. How can I help you, Lord Luffy? As you can see, we are newly arrived pirates from the New World. Perhaps you would like to recruit us into your fleet? He asked, knowing very well that he couldn't face the monster of Marineford. They were just ants compared to what they saw in the war. Luffy looked at him calmly while shaking his head. I'm not recruiting at the moment, Luffy was direct. I want you to bring me food and water and also a female outfit.
I'm tired of feeling these irons resounding on my back, Luffy murmured while Rebecca blushed even more at this comment.
Hey, what do you think you're talking about my daughter?
The toy soldier immediately shouted, but Luffy didn't care and continued looking at the pirates. The group quickly started to move after that, and Luffy and the others waited for the pirates to bring what was requested quite quickly and obediently, complying with Luffy's demands to avoid offending him.
Lord Luffy, we have prepared a great banquet for you, your girl, and your pet.
The pirate captain said, trying to be as polite as possible.
Who are you calling a pet?
The toy soldier immediately shouted, but Luffy just smiled and began to eat.
Rebecca ended up joining him as they sat by the deck.
Where's the loot? Bring me alcoholic drinks, Luffy ordered, while the men quickly started bringing him the best they had. Luffy drank and ate while Rebecca ate and rested after changing clothes, putting on a dress that Luffy had to buy in the store because the pirates only had men's clothes.
At least now she wasn't showing most of her body anymore. Lord Luffy, can you give me an autograph? A boy around Rebecca's age approached with Luffy's 3.5 billion poster.
Luffy took the paper with a feather, signed it, and handed it to the boy who reminded him a lot of Kobe. The boy was very pleased, and Luffy turned his attention back to the captain.
I must admit, this was better than I expected, Luffy murmured at the end and looked at the men who were keeping a watchful eye on him. Well, it seems I said I wasn't recruiting, but if you want to be part of my fleet, I challenge you to survive a year in the New World.
Make your own names, and if you've done that and still want to join me, seek me out. You'll know when I'm in the New World, Luffy spoke as the men nodded.
It will be an honor, Lord Luffy, the captain exclaimed.
Luffy stood up, stretched his body, and looked at them.
Tell me your name, he asked the captain. I am Captain Barocos, Lord Luffy. I accept the challenge. We'll survive a year in this sea and then seek you out to be recruited, he said.
After all, of all those on the sea at this moment, Luffy was the one everyone saw as the future pirate king. Great, here's a list of crimes I absolutely do not accept under normal conditions. Luffy took a paper from the system and handed it to the captain, who took it and began reading. Luffy heard the man nod in respect to the rules, and he just nodded before picking up Rebecca with a shout, placing the soldier on top of her, and jumping into the air.
Luffy soared high, carrying Rebecca like a princess.
He left the ship on the other side of the horizon and continued across the sea for the next few hours, following the direction of the two Viver cards until he spotted ships on the other end of the horizon and advanced.
It was not just a ship of the Don Quixote family's minions but also a marine ship beside it.
These guys are fast, Luffy murmured and advanced with all speed. As he quickly approached, he was attacked with sword slashes coming at him, dodging and keeping Rebecca safe.
It's him, he's here.
Luffy began to hear the sailors quickly start shouting, stunned, trying to flee from the man worth over 3 billion.
Where are you going, you idiots? We can't run from fighting for justice. We must stop this pirate right here.
A female voice exclaimed as Luffy saw Gion, who quickly set out with her ship as soon as Virgo made the call. She didn't like that vice admiral, but still, he was a member of the navy. She took the ship and advanced to Punk Hazard until she found the ship in the middle of the sea. Understanding that it left the island and was frustrated that Luffy had escaped to another place. Luffy had no difficulty in passing through all her attacks and reaching a ship, while Gion pointed her weapon at him, looking angry.
Pirate Monkey D, Luffy.
I am here to arrest you and bring you to justice after all your crimes, she exclaimed while everyone looked at Gion a bit cautiously, wondering if she saw what he did in Marineford, be they lackeys or sailors on the ships.
Luffy looked with interest.
So you are the famous Gion, Vice Admiral of the Marines, operating in the New World. You are more beautiful than I imagined, Luffy said with a smile, looking at the girl with oriental touches and a mole below her mouth.
He's trying to hit on Vice Admiral Gion, the sailors quickly shouted jealously. Enough of this crap, pirate! Gion said, advancing towards Luffy.
Luffy just looked at her, unfazed by her attacking him. Even without using his devil fruit powers, Luffy could easily handle several vice admirals. Throwing Rebecca up, he dodged Gio's attack and reappeared behind the woman, and before she could react, Luffy moved to strike and gave her a slap on the butt so hard that it made her fly a few meters before falling, scratching her bottom as she looked at him with a glare of hatred. "You bastard," she exclaimed, her anger reaching a new level towards Luffy. He slapped the vice admiral's butt. "Bastard," the sailors immediately began shouting. Luffy just smiled. "Don't be like that, Gion, it wasn't that bad," he commented before picking Rebecca up again and placing her on the ground. "Wait a bit, I'll deal with these marines," he said. In the next moment, he disappeared. Gion, even with immense pain in her right buttock, prepared to face the pirate, and the fight lasted a few more minutes. However, all the marines were shocked as their vice-admiral was already on the ground defeated. Luffy looked at them. It didn't take long for him to knock everyone else down with haki while looking at Doflamingo's subordinates, who were trembling as they faced Luffy. "Mr. Luffy, it wasn't our fault," they immediately shouted, not wanting to die. "They appeared out of nowhere and captured us, imprisoning all their prisoners with Chief Gladius," one of them informed. Luffy just nodded. "I'll be right back. So, if you try anything against these girls, I promise you will suffer in hell," he said in a threatening tone, making them all kneel. They all sweated and shouted, "Yes, we will do exactly that. We will protect them with our lives," they exclaimed as Luffy boarded the marine ship. Caesar was conflicted, wondering if it was worse or better to go with that demon or go to Impel Down. However, he had no choice, he was now on a marine ship heading to Impel Down. But that changed when he saw Luffy entering the area and breaking the door with an explosion. "Well, it looks like you were trying to escape from me, but you wouldn't get far," Luffy commented while breaking into Caesar's cell, dragging him out with an expression of fear and anger, also grabbing Monet, leaving only Gladius in one of the cells. "Why are you taking me too?" Monet asked. She could understand him taking her from Punk Hazard, but now directly, and even so, he still insisted on taking her. "Well, I need an assistant." "Vivi can't handle everything alone," Luffy said, and Monet looked at him strangely, not remembering agreeing to obey at any point, but Luffy didn't care. He went back outside, reflecting. "I only have 2 hands, I can't take everyone at once like this," he murmured until he looked at Caesar, who stared at him with a glint in his eyes, while the mad scientist did not like that at all. In the next moment, Caesar found himself tied in a chain, while Luffy grabbed Monet and Rebecca by the waist, with a third woman tied to his back. Rebecca was holding the toy soldier. Then Luffy jumped into the air and started to ascend while Caesar screamed as he was pulled by a chain in the air, trying not to curse due to the humiliation. Luffy left Gladius still in the prison with Doflamingo's subordinates to free him. Luffy had nothing more to do with them and proceeded to the first part of the Grand Line. "Mr. Luffy, why are you taking this marine?" Rebecca couldn't help but ask, looking strangely at Gion being carried by Luffy unconsciously. "I didn't want to leave her here alone, in a place full of pirates, while the marines are down. I'm doing this for her safety," Luffy said, thinking of dropping her off at Sabaody. And so he continued. He did not pass through the middle of the Red Line, which would be the shortest route to Sabaody. However, there was Mary Geos, and he certainly would not be welcomed if seen by the Gorosei. So, he followed around several kilometers of the city until he passed to the side of the paradise, in the middle of the comb belt, almost entering the East Blue, and then proceeded to his final destination on his eternal pose, which was Sabaody. He only had these destinations on his 3 eternal poses, Punk Hazard, Dressrosa, and Sabaody, finally heading to the last point to finish his journey and its final details before returning to Skypiea. Chapter 356, Bonnie's Response. Third-person POV. Sabaody. The Straw Hat crew was in Shikuyaku's bar at the moment, having arrived without alerting anyone, with the ship hidden in the air among the trees thanks to Beppo's power, while everyone was gathered around talking to Rayleigh about the war. Bartolomeo was turned to stone in the middle of the place. "Why is this person still turned to stone?" Kuina complained, looking at the man with a strange expression. "We should save him. Does anyone know the cure for petrification?" "Lamy?" Chopper exclaimed, but Lamy wasn't paying attention, fighting Reiju in the middle of the bar. A bottle broke in the middle of the place while Shikuyaku watched due to the fight between the 2 women. "You spilled a good whiskey," so that'll be 1 billion berries, he announced.
What do you mean 1 billion berries? Nami immediately exclaimed with a grimace. Hey, uncle. You really were in the Pirate King's crew, Ace's father?
Nearby, Lucy was looking at Rayleigh while drinking.
You could say that, and you left the Marines to become a pirate to save your family. You're very brave, he commented.
Yes, I wouldn't let Ace die.
Shishi.
Lucy said with a smile.
What a noise, this is too much for a god.
Enel complained nearby, while Hugo stood next to him with crossed arms.
Domino was also quietly in a corner. Catch this.
Usopp was throwing a rubber ball for Chaochu to fetch in the middle of the bar.
Woof.
Chaochu was playing without any issues, picking up the ball before bringing it back to Usopp.
Ha 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 ha. Yamato was laughing at the counter. They seemed to be having a lot of fun. Robin said, sitting next to him.
How long will it take for Luffy to get here? They'll destroy the bar before he shows up and that woman won't charge cheap.
Nojiko commented.
Vivi near the window was startled when a huge finger touched her from behind, and she looked at the window with the finger sticking out while a huge eye appeared, with Shirahoshi looking at them from outside the bar.
There's someone here wanting to speak to Luffy-sama. Shirahoshi announced. Someone wanting to see Luffy? Alvida commented, going to see who it was.
Where's the Meister? I prepared these delicious explosive cookies. Baby 5 murmured, crying, while her food was getting cold.
How scary! Beepo exclaimed. Nay, that doesn't look very good, maybe you should use takoyaki. Hachi suggested.
Hey, don't give her ideas.
Usopp shouted.
Alvida appeared with a pink-haired woman walking firmly on the ground.
Where is Straw Hat?
She demanded, as if losing her pride.
I don't know. Luffy must have gotten lost on the way.
Zoro responded, drinking alcohol while everyone looked at him strangely.
Don't forget to pay 2 billion for the sake, Swordsman-san, Shikoyaku requested. Hey, you're trying to rob us. Nami exclaimed furiously at the barwoman while she smoked without caring about it.
Luffy will be here soon, he has the eternal pose to the island.
Nojiko responded. All right. I'll wait for him.
Bonnie said, sitting in a place while looking to the side with a huge eye staring at her.
I always liked looking at your hair, it looks so much like mine. Bonnie-sama. Shirahoshi commented. Don't stare at me like that. Bonnie was slightly startled by the giant mermaid.
It was a moment later that Usopp and Enel sensed something with their observation haki before everyone else.
Luffy is coming.
Usopp exclaimed while it didn't take long for the others to feel it, and the next moment, someone descended from the sky landing in front of the bar with Shirahoshi beside him.
Finally we're back. Luffy commented with a smile, looking at their destination finally found. Luffy-sama.
Shirahoshi immediately exclaimed to Luffy, while he opened a smile.
Hello wife, we'll soon be home and you can have a space to gather with everyone. Luffy said while placing Rebecca and Monet on the ground. Enemy of the Don Quixote family.
I'm not surprised by this, toy soldier, Luffy interrupted before continuing. She is your daughter, so I understand your concern, Luffy admitted, catching both the toy soldier and Rebecca looking at Luffy confused.
What do you mean by that? Mr. Luffy? Rebecca asked bewildered.
Do you know who I am? The soldier exclaimed, stunned. After all, even the Don Quixote family doesn't know about him, with everyone forgetting his existence as soon as he turned into a toy.
Yes.
You are Kairos, married to Princess Scarlet, mother of Rebecca, and she is your daughter, that's why you always accompany her, Luffy spoke.
Wait, father. I have a father?
Rebecca couldn't be more stunned as she looked at Luffy and the supposed father who had been accompanying her for years while helping her train, but she had never imagined that he would be her father. Yes, the toy in front of you is your father, his name is Kairos, the one you treat as a legend when you see his statue in the arena. He is your father transformed by a devil fruit user, and that makes you forget his existence too. I am the only one who really knows who he is, Luffy said, and at that moment, Rebecca was completely taken aback. She had always heard about the statue of Kairos in the middle of the Colosseum, symbolizing a legendary gladiator that existed, but no one remembered him, like a true legend.
Is this really true? She murmured while even Kairos didn't know what to say. Let's leave this reunion for later, we have to get out of Dressrosa. I'll take you with me and if you want to come along, feel free, Luffy said, not wanting to separate the father from the daughter. They didn't even know how to respond to what they had just heard, and Luffy just sighed as he appeared next to Rebecca, grabbed her by the waist and the toy soldier by the arm, and began to leave before anyone could react, through the hole he had created. As soon as they left, a sword appeared in front of them, as Diamante tried to cut him at that moment, but Luffy maneuvered carrying the two by his side and dodged the attack as Diamante appeared in front of him.
Mugiwara!
Diamante exclaimed with hatred, ready to launch another attack.
Hey, Rebecca, grab your father, I need a free hand, Luffy exclaimed and threw the toy to the girl who caught him, while he advanced towards the high-ranking man from the Don Quixote family. Once again the sword tried to attack him but making curves in the air with Geppo and Saro, Luffy surprised Diamante, as he delivered a punch to his face, making the makeup-clad man fly backwards, hitting against a building in the city. One down, now the other, Luffy commented as the city transformed in front of him with a giant of houses and rocks emerging.
Mugiwara!
Pika exclaimed, only 20 meters tall, while Luffy puffed his cheeks.
Ha 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 ha. Look at your voice, Pika, I didn't know it was so funny.
Luffy exclaimed, unable to stop laughing at the giant, while the toy soldier continued to be held by Rebecca, watching everything here without being able to react properly due to Luffy's incredible speed.
You bastard! Pika tried to hit him with a punch. Ha 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 ha.
Take that, Pika.
Ha 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 ha.
Luffy continued laughing and went straight into his punch, hitting it, still laughing.
The next moment, the two fists collided, but Luffy didn't give his opponent a chance as his haki was much more powerful, making Pika's fist explode, and Luffy took this opportunity to take off into the sky with Rebecca and the soldier, leaving Dressrosa in chaos with this little fight. Luffy treated them like children, but it wasn't the time for them to interfere with Dressrosa. Chapter 355, Returning to Paradise. Third-person POV. New World. Mr. Luffy, I am a bit tired, Rebecca's voice sounded from behind Luffy as she clung tightly to his neck. With a soldier behind her, the girl had a slight blush on her face. Luffy nodded, understanding that this girl, who had been traveling through the night, was exhausted and needed some rest. All right, let's find a ship, Luffy said and continued across the open sea. They spotted a pirate ship in a corner and advanced towards it in the next moment. Let's choose an island to replenish our supplies before going further into the sea, the captain with a 40 million berries bounty exclaimed as his crew raised their weapons. This ship belonged to a pirate group that had just entered the New World, deciding to sail these waters after the battle in a strong manner, excited to conquer their own territories and make their name in this new era. However, they did not expect an object at high speed to explode from the sky onto the deck, sinking the ship in the next moment. As the ship returned to normal while rocking uncontrollably, the pirates quickly panicked, with most of them falling to the ground unbalanced by the impact. What is that? Enemy attack. Where is it? The pirates quickly exclaimed various words in fear, looking for any ship that might have fired that cannonball at them. Wait, there's someone there, someone shouted, pointing a finger at the explosion, seeing a shadow emerging from the debris of the wood. As Luffy stepped out from that spot, he appeared in front of them, staring them down. All the men quickly raised their swords at him with a look of caution and anger for invading their ship. Rebecca was already on the ground, approaching him cautiously, waiting for Luffy to deal with the pirates. It was then that the pirates finally realized who was in front of them with his distinctive face and straw hat. Many began to tremble immediately. That's Monkey D. Luffy, the Yonko without territories, the pirate with a bounty of 3,500,000,000 berries. Quickly, exclamations were heard as Luffy scratched his nose, bored with this new way people had of reacting to him now. Drop your weapons. Do you think we can fight him? The captain quickly shouted, making all his men drop their swords, not wanting to present a threat to this monster. As the captain rubbed his hands, he approached Luffy. How can I help you, Lord Luffy? As you can see, we are newly arrived pirates from the New World. Perhaps you would like to recruit us into your fleet? He asked, knowing very well that he couldn't face the monster of Marineford. They were just ants compared to what they saw in the war. Luffy looked at him calmly while shaking his head. I'm not recruiting at the moment, Luffy was direct. I want you to bring me food and water and also a female outfit. I'm tired of feeling these irons resounding on my back, Luffy murmured while Rebecca blushed even more at this comment. Hey, what do you think you're talking about my daughter? The toy soldier immediately shouted, but Luffy didn't care and continued looking at the pirates. The group quickly started to move after that, and Luffy and the others waited for the pirates to bring what was requested quite quickly and obediently, complying with Luffy's demands to avoid offending him. Lord Luffy, we have prepared a great banquet for you, your girl, and your pet. The pirate captain said, trying to be as polite as possible. Who are you calling a pet? The toy soldier immediately shouted, but Luffy just smiled and began to eat. Rebecca ended up joining him as they sat by the deck. Where's the loot? Bring me alcoholic drinks, Luffy ordered, while the men quickly started bringing him the best they had. Luffy drank and ate while Rebecca ate and rested after changing clothes, putting on a dress that Luffy had to buy in the store because the pirates only had men's clothes. At least now she wasn't showing most of her body anymore. Lord Luffy. Can you give me an autograph? A boy around Rebecca's age approached with Luffy's 3.5 billion poster. Luffy took the paper with a feather, signed it, and handed it to the boy who reminded him a lot of Kobe. The boy was very pleased, and Luffy turned his attention back to the captain. I must admit, this was better than I expected, Luffy murmured at the end and looked at the men who were keeping a watchful eye on him. Well, it seems I said I wasn't recruiting, but if you want to be part of my fleet, I challenge you to survive a year in the New World. Make your own names, and if you've done that and still want to join me, seek me out. You'll know when I'm in the New World, Luffy spoke as the men nodded. It will be an honor, Lord Luffy, the captain exclaimed. Luffy stood up, stretched his body, and looked at them. Tell me your name, he asked the captain. I am Captain Barocos, Lord Luffy. I accept the challenge. We'll survive a year in this sea and then seek you out to be recruited, he said. After all, of all those on the sea at this moment, Luffy was the one everyone saw as the future pirate king. Great, here's a list of crimes I absolutely do not accept under normal conditions. Luffy took a paper from the system and handed it to the captain, who took it and began reading. Luffy heard the man nod in respect to the rules, and he just nodded before picking up Rebecca with a shout, placing the soldier on top of her, and jumping into the air. Luffy soared high, carrying Rebecca like a princess. He left the ship on the other side of the horizon and continued across the sea for the next few hours, following the direction of the two Viver cards until he spotted ships on the other end of the horizon and advanced. It was not just a ship of the Don Quixote family's minions but also a marine ship beside it. These guys are fast, Luffy murmured and advanced with all speed. As he quickly approached, he was attacked with sword slashes coming at him, dodging and keeping Rebecca safe. It's him, he's here. Luffy began to hear the sailors quickly start shouting, stunned, trying to flee from the man worth over 3 billion. Where are you going, you idiots? We can't run from fighting for justice. We must stop this pirate right here. A female voice exclaimed as Luffy saw Gion, who quickly set out with her ship as soon as Virgo made the call. She didn't like that vice admiral, but still, he was a member of the navy. She took the ship and advanced to Punk Hazard until she found the ship in the middle of the sea. Understanding that it left the island and was frustrated that Luffy had escaped to another place. Luffy had no difficulty in passing through all her attacks and reaching a ship, while Gion pointed her weapon at him, looking angry. Pirate Monkey D, Luffy. I am here to arrest you and bring you to justice after all your crimes, she exclaimed while everyone looked at Gion a bit cautiously, wondering if she saw what he did in Marineford, be they lackeys or sailors on the ships. Luffy looked with interest. So you are the famous Gion, Vice Admiral of the Marines, operating in the New World. You are more beautiful than I imagined, Luffy said with a smile, looking at the girl with oriental touches and a mole below her mouth. He's trying to hit on Vice Admiral Gion, the sailors quickly shouted jealously. Enough of this crap, pirate! Gion said, advancing towards Luffy. Luffy just looked at her, unfazed by her attacking him.
Even without using his devil fruit powers, Luffy could easily handle several vice admirals. Throwing Rebecca up, he dodged Gio's attack and reappeared behind the woman, and before she could react, Luffy moved to strike and gave her a slap on the butt so hard that it made her fly a few meters before falling, scratching her bottom as she looked at him with a glare of hatred. "You bastard," she exclaimed, her anger reaching a new level towards Luffy. He slapped the vice admiral's butt. "Bastard," the sailors immediately began shouting. Luffy just smiled. "Don't be like that, Gion, it wasn't that bad," he commented before picking Rebecca up again and placing her on the ground. "Wait a bit, I'll deal with these marines," he said. In the next moment, he disappeared. Gion, even with immense pain in her right buttock, prepared to face the pirate, and the fight lasted a few more minutes. However, all the marines were shocked as their vice admiral was already on the ground defeated. Luffy looked at them. It didn't take long for him to knock everyone else down with haki while looking at Doflamingo's subordinates, who were trembling as they faced Luffy. "Mr. Luffy, it wasn't our fault," they immediately shouted, not wanting to die. "They appeared out of nowhere and captured us, imprisoning all their prisoners with Chief Gladius," one of them informed. Luffy just nodded. "I'll be right back. So, if you try anything against these girls, I promise you will suffer in hell," he said in a threatening tone, making them all kneel. They all sweated and shouted, "Yes, we will do exactly that. We will protect them with our lives," they exclaimed as Luffy boarded the marine ship. Caesar was conflicted, wondering if it was worse or better to go with that demon or go to Impel Down. However, he had no choice, he was now on a marine ship heading to Impel Down. But that changed when he saw Luffy entering the area and breaking the door with an explosion. "Well, it looks like you were trying to escape from me, but you wouldn't get far," Luffy commented while breaking into Caesar's cell, dragging him out with an expression of fear and anger, also grabbing Monet, leaving only Gladius in one of the cells. "Why are you taking me too?" Monet asked. She could understand him taking her from Punk Hazard, but now directly, and even so, he still insisted on taking her. "Well, I need an assistant." "Vivi can't handle everything alone," Luffy said, and Monet looked at him strangely, not remembering agreeing to obey at any point, but Luffy didn't care. He went back outside, reflecting. "I only have 2 hands, I can't take everyone at once like this," he murmured until he looked at Caesar, who stared at him with a glint in his eyes, while the mad scientist did not like that at all. In the next moment, Caesar found himself tied in a chain, while Luffy grabbed Monet and Rebecca by the waist, with a third woman tied to his back. Rebecca was holding the toy soldier. Then Luffy jumped into the air and started to ascend while Caesar screamed as he was pulled by a chain in the air, trying not to curse due to the humiliation. Luffy left Gladius still in the prison with Doflamingo's subordinates to free him. Luffy had nothing more to do with them and proceeded to the first part of the Grand Line. "Mr. Luffy, why are you taking this marine?" Rebecca couldn't help but ask, looking strangely at Gion being carried by Luffy unconsciously. "I didn't want to leave her here alone, in a place full of pirates, while the marines are down. I'm doing this for her safety," Luffy said, thinking of dropping her off at Sabaody. And so he continued. He did not pass through the middle of the Red Line, which would be the shortest route to Sabaody. However, there was Mary Geos, and he certainly would not be welcomed if seen by the Gorosei. So, he followed around several kilometers of the city until he passed to the side of the paradise, in the middle of the comb belt, almost entering the East Blue, and then proceeded to his final destination on his eternal pose, which was Sabaody. He only had these destinations on his 3 eternal poses, Punk Hazard, Dressrosa, and Sabaody, finally heading to the last point to finish his journey and its final details before returning to Skypiea. Chapter 356, Bonnie's Response. Third-person POV. Sabaody. The Straw Hat crew was in Shikuyaku's bar at the moment, having arrived without alerting anyone, with the ship hidden in the air among the trees thanks to Beppo's power, while everyone was gathered around talking to Rayleigh about the war. Bartolomeo was turned to stone in the middle of the place. "Why is this person still turned to stone?" Kuina complained, looking at the man with a strange expression. "We should save him. Does anyone know the cure for petrification?" "Lamy?" Chopper exclaimed, but Lamy wasn't paying attention, fighting Reiju in the middle of the bar. A bottle broke in the middle of the place while Shikuyaku watched due to the fight between the two women. "You spilled a good whiskey, so that'll be 1 billion berries," he announced.
"What do you mean 1 billion berries?" Nami immediately exclaimed with a grimace. "Hey, uncle. You really were in the Pirate King's crew, Ace's father?"
Nearby, Lucy was looking at Rayleigh while drinking.
"You could say that, and you left the Marines to become a pirate to save your family. You're very brave," he commented.
"Yes, I wouldn't let Ace die."
Shishi.
Lucy said with a smile.
"What a noise, this is too much for a god."
Enel complained nearby, while Hugo stood next to him with crossed arms.
Domino was also quietly in a corner. "Catch this."
Usopp was throwing a rubber ball for Chaochu to fetch in the middle of the bar.
Woof.
Chaochu was playing without any issues, picking up the ball before bringing it back to Usopp.
Ha 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 ha. Yamato was laughing at the counter. "They seem to be having a lot of fun," Robin said, sitting next to him.
"How long will it take for Luffy to get here? They'll destroy the bar before he shows up and that woman won't charge cheap."
Nojiko commented.
Vivi near the window was startled when a huge finger touched her from behind, and she looked at the window with the finger sticking out while a huge eye appeared, with Shirahoshi looking at them from outside the bar.
"There's someone here wanting to speak to Luffy-sama," Shirahoshi announced. "Someone wanting to see Luffy?" Alvida commented, going to see who it was.
"Where's the Meister? I prepared these delicious explosive cookies," Baby 5 murmured, crying, while her food was getting cold.
"How scary!" Beepo exclaimed. "Nay, that doesn't look very good, maybe you should use takoyaki," Hachi suggested.
"Hey, don't give her ideas,"
Usopp shouted.
Alvida appeared with a pink-haired woman walking firmly on the ground.
"Where is Straw Hat?"
she demanded, as if losing her pride.
"I don't know. Luffy must have gotten lost on the way,"
Zoro responded, drinking alcohol while everyone looked at him strangely.
"Don't forget to pay 2 billion for the sake, Swordsman-san," Shikoyaku requested. "Hey, you're trying to rob us," Nami exclaimed furiously at the barwoman while she smoked without caring about it.
"Luffy will be here soon, he has the eternal pose to the island,"
Nojiko responded. "All right. I'll wait for him,"
Bonnie said, sitting in a place while looking to the side with a huge eye staring at her.
"I always liked looking at your hair, it looks so much like mine." "Bonnie-sama," Shirahoshi commented. "Don't stare at me like that."
Bonnie was slightly startled by the giant mermaid. It was a moment later that Usopp and Enel sensed something with their observation haki before everyone else.
"Luffy is coming,"
Usopp exclaimed while it didn't take long for the others to feel it, and the next moment, someone descended from the sky landing in front of the bar with Shirahoshi beside him.
"Finally we're back," Luffy commented with a smile, looking at their destination finally found. "Luffy-sama,"
Shirahoshi immediately exclaimed to Luffy, while he opened a smile.
"Hello wife, we'll soon be home and you can have a space to gather with everyone," Luffy said while placing Rebecca and Monet on the ground. Chapter 358, Removing the Slave Mark. Third-person POV. Sabayeti.
The calm belt sea stirred suddenly, but it wasn't due to a sea king prowling these waters. Instead, ships with considerable military force sliced through the waters, passing all the islands in this sea, heading towards a single destination. There were 20 Navy warships, with 10 vice admirals and 1 admiral, all loaded to explode the island of women and destroy Boa Hancock, the Shichibukai who had turned against the Navy. Akainu stared with fierce eyes at the horizon, eagerly waiting to act against the traitors who had brought dishonor to the Navy. Seconds turned into minutes, and then an hour passed. He grew frustrated as nothing appeared on the horizon where an island should have been emerging.
"Where is Amazon Lily?" he growled to himself. "Admiral Akainu." Some sailors approached at that moment with cautious looks. "What's wrong? Why isn't the island appearing? Did we take a wrong route? I swear whoever did this will pay dearly," Akainu exclaimed angrily.
"It's not that, we're on the right path," but... The man seemed hesitant and lost. We reviewed the route and the Navy's maps for the region. The island should have appeared by now. In fact, we passed where it should have been more than an hour ago.
He said. What do you mean? Akainu growled. The island disappeared.
He declared, leaving Akainu stunned as the ships were almost entering the east blue through the calm belt. Meanwhile, a huge island traveled through the sky, above the clouds, continuing to fly over paradise after leaving the calm belt unnoticed, only occasionally casting a massive shadow over some islands, with anyone witnessing it assuming it was just a cloud. On this island, which was indeed Amazon Lily, dozens of women looked from the edge of the island as they gazed at the clouds around them, excitedly exclaiming at the unique view in their lives while traveling over 10,000 meters in the air. Luffy's crew was all present on the island along with his friends and allies, leaving all the ships stationary in the middle of the island, while a huge festival began with all the island's women welcoming the Straw Hats in a grand feast. As night fell with Bepo still steering the island towards Skypiea, Luffy struggled to please so many wives gathered, especially Hancock who wanted to spend hours in the act with Luffy, without anyone interrupting, but even with her dissatisfaction, she shared the bed with other women, staying for at least 2 days behind closed doors until Luffy seemed to emerge tired at the end, leaving the room alone.
Don't you ever settle down, boy? What kind of life is this? Don't you even go out to eat? Gloriosa exclaimed as soon as she saw Luffy leaving the women sleeping. Do you think just some women can bring me down?
Luffy challenged her, but he looked at her with dark circles under his eyes.
You're clearly tired. She grimaced. Ha 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 ha. Don't be like that, now tell me what's been happening these 2 days? Luffy asked laughing.
Well, your crew is scattered across the island, but Amazon Lily is turning into chaos. She exclaimed, shaking her staff. First, your sister is depleting the island's food supply.
She began.
Then that swordsman of yours got lost and cut down a mountain to find the city again.
What kind of person needs to cut a mountain to get back to the city? Well, Zoro is predictable in that regard. Luffy commented, holding back laughter. There's also a lunatic claiming he's a god. Now the women of this island are wondering if men are gods. She exclaimed unsatisfied. Anul. Another predictable one. Luffy murmured. There's also an extremely angry girl on this island. She's turning everyone into children while asking for pizza, something we don't have on the island. She spoke, and Luffy immediately knew. She's mad because we beat up her dad. Luffy shrugged it off. As for the others, they're doing strange things, but nothing as noticeable as these first 3. Gloriosa said at the end a bit more calmly. I see. Anyway, I promised something. You can call Hancock's sisters. We'll start removing her brand. Luffy requested, and the door behind him immediately opened with Hancock looking at him with shining eyes. Really, my love, she exclaimed, jumping on Luffy, while he just let her hug him tightly without resisting. A smitten empress. Gloriosa murmured and went to call the other 2 sisters. A moment later she arrived while they looked nervously at Luffy being embraced by Hancock. Luffy looked at them and pulled Hancock away from his side. Now that you're here, prepare a special room where we can be alone. I'm going to fetch 2 people. Luffy declared and went back to the room. Hey, what are you doing? A female voice was heard. Just put this on, we have something to do. Luffy spoke. Hey, I thought you liked seeing me naked. I do appreciate you 2 naked, believe me, but I need you out there, put on this dress. Luffy declared as he opened the doors, taking 2 women by the waist as they came out tired from the room. Luffy followed the Boa sisters, and they went to a special room, where Luffy gave instructions to Lami and Reiju. As you can see, they have a mark on their backs. Lami will be in charge of cutting their skin to remove the ink, and Reiju will regenerate it with the Phoenix Flames. Luffy spoke, while the 2 women, still sleepy, nodded at the end. Don't interfere, you hear? Do your job and I'll do mine, got it? Both started to argue quickly. Are we going to be okay? Marigold murmured fearfully. Of course you will, just... Luffy said before slapping each on the head, stop fighting and help these sisters. Luffy exclaimed.
They finally stopped while even Boa Sandersonia watched cautiously, but Hancock didn't care as she continued to gaze at Luffy.
I'm going to leave now. You can start.
Luffy said and left the room as he began to wander through the castle, pausing at a painting of Lily.
She's a copy of Vivi. Luffy murmured. She's not. Gloriosa approached. Yeah.
I learned a bit about her life in the Lost Century from a poneglyph in Alabasta.
Luffy murmured.
But there are still doubts about her, aren't there?
Gloriosa couldn't help noticing that in Luffy's look.
Yes, there are things I still don't understand, important things.
He admitted. Why didn't him tear up Vivi's poster like he did with Luffy, Blackbeard, and Shirahoshi?
Why did he keep it? He has a painting just like this one. What's his relationship with Lily, and is he interested or planning something for my Vivi?
I'll kill him.
Luffy debated internally while still looking at Lily and what her real motive was for spreading the poneglyphs around the world. Why not accept going to marry Geos, and what interest I'm had behind it all? There were so many secrets, but he would uncover them by the end of his journey and knew he was destined to fight against him. His thoughts were interrupted when a sound of thunder emerged at one of the windows and Luffy sighed, wondering what this guy wanted now. After all, he was there to talk to him.
I'm going to see what Enel wants, Luffy told Gloriosa, while she waited for Luffy's 2 crew members to remove the slave mark from the sisters. Tell me, Enel.
Luffy stepped out onto the balcony with the former god of Skypiea sitting there looking at him with a calm expression.
I'm leaving. He spoke. You're leaving?
Luffy looked at him a bit confused. You will return to Skypiea and train everyone, but I don't want to be a part of that.
I'm going to do my own training. He spoke seriously. What are your plans?
Luffy asked, although surprised. He wasn't upset. After all, Enel's presence would cause discord with the former inhabitants of the Sky Kingdom, although it could also be good training for everyone.
I'm going to the moon, he declared. Well, I see nothing wrong with that, as long as you don't come back weak from this trip. Luffy spoke. I will be so strong that I could defeat you, demon. Then I will become a god. Enel said confidently and mockingly, but Luffy didn't mind.
I hope so. After all, even in this state, I can defeat you. I don't want weak people in what's about to happen in this world, not in my main crew.
Luffy declared while Enel clicked his tongue.
Do not underestimate me. My destiny is to become the god of this world, and I will prove it to everyone by subjugating you, Enel said in his usual tone. You said you will spend a year in training, so I will leave in 1 year and fulfill my dream of going to the moon, he spoke. Be that as it may, if you are leaving, we can't stay with the Tenri Yubito while they will be detected by the Vivre cards from Mary Geos. Luffy said, after all, it was Enel who was blocking that.
Those false gods. Enel scoffed.
Take them with you, do whatever you want with them, it doesn't matter to me.
Luffy said, indifferent to whatever suffering they might endure at Enel's hands. That sounds interesting. I can show the false gods what a true god is like.
Enel seemed pleased with the idea.
I'm going then, he declared, and Luffy nodded.
Enel transformed into a bolt of lightning and went to Black Pearl, taking the prisoners with Hugo's help, and went to his ark, beginning to place them in his vessel before starting to head towards the sky.
Where is Enel going? Nojiko approached at that moment next to Robin. He will have different plans for the next year, so let him be. Luffy spoke, returning inside again. We're done.
Reiju came out of the room with Lami at that moment.
Ah!
A cry of joy erupted from the other side of the door, as the 3 sisters seemed overwhelmed by their disappearing brand, and it wasn't long before they came out and rushed to Luffy, embracing him.
Thank you! They cried and shouted at the same time.
I just made the suggestion. It was Lami and Reiju who did it. Luffy murmured, being crushed. This continued for a while until Luffy finally managed to calm them down, at least 2 of them, while Hancock continued to cling to him.
Well, if we're here celebrating, let's have a big feast today,
Luffy declared as his other women also came out of the room, and they organized a grand feast at that moment for the rest of the day going into the next, with Amazon Lily not far from Skypiea as the islands began to appear at that moment.
Chapter 359 New Members for the Fleet. Third Person POV. Sabayeti. You're going out again? Nami looked past Vivi to Luffy.
There's another group of people nearby. I can meet them without drawing attention while I plan to recruit them, Luffy told his entire crew. No one could disagree with that as Luffy nodded. They were almost reaching Skypiea and Luffy wanted to see a few more people he had secretly kept Vivre cards for, to follow them in the near future, which would be used at this moment. After all, his fleet needed new powerful members. I want you all to organize everything in Skypiea, see what damage the prison break has caused and check on the rest of the crew. I'll head there when I can, Luffy spoke again before leaving Amazon Lily, floating through the air. He quickly advanced over the blue sea using Jeppo as he spotted some islands, but he followed his Vivre card directly to a specific one. It was a small island, where there was a port village, trading fish, and resources that some pirates bought to stock up their supplies. With the fall of the Marines, their ports were busier than ever, while everyone laughed and even fought with each other. The pirates themselves fought to preserve the town. After all, if it lacked resources to fill their ships, they would be without a place to refuel on their journeys. In a tavern where pirates met, it was quiet at this moment, while a man watched attentively ahead, being the tavern keeper. He used to work in Jaya, but the island was destroyed by powerful pirates fighting against each other, so he decided to open his bar here but ended up encountering one of the pirates involved in the chaos of Jaya's destruction. This same man seemed in a bad mood as he hit everyone else present, and the entire bar was full of bodies thrown around. He was cautious despite not wanting a fight in his bar. He didn't have the courage to contradict this pirate. Give me more alcohol, the blonde man demanded while the bartender, with no choice, nodded. He still remembers that everything started with that supernova kid starting a fight with this man in his bar, who got beaten so badly that Doflamingo came to Jaya and the chaos began even with the arrival of the beast pirates and Monkey D. Luffy himself. I still remember that pirate kid wanting to go after Straw Hat back then. Surely the man had no idea who he was dealing with. The man quickly dismissed this thought and went to the drink showcase to get another bottle to hand to the pirate before he became the target of his fury. As soon as he placed the bottle on the table, the doors burst open at that moment, while the owner looked up with a furrowed brow, knowing he could be yet another victim of this frustrated lunatic. Bellamy, the voice of the stranger said as he began to enter the bar. The owner finally began to see who was entering the place and couldn't be more shocked, as he froze completely standing in that position, seeing that man of all people at sea at this moment, entering his bar. Bellamy turned around at this moment, frustrated, to see who had called him, but as soon as he saw Luffy, he recognized him immediately. You? He was furious about everything that had started happening months ago, having left his pirate group after learning of Doflamingo's death at Marineford. He didn't know what to do anymore. After all, Doflamingo was the person he most admired in this world, a person he wanted to become. And standing in front of him was none other than Monkey D. Luffy, the one who had overcome Doflamingo, had him imprisoned in Jaya, and had crew members so powerful that one of them ended the life of the one he most admired in the world. I see you're handling your frustration in a rather odd way, Luffy spoke calmly, practically mocking Bellamy.
What are you doing here? Bellamy demanded immediately, but Luffy just smiled. Isn't it obvious? I came here to recruit you. You seem lost here, he said. Bellamy really was lost, but his plans were to go to the New World and speak with the remnants of the Don Quixote family members to find out what their plans were, looking for a new path in his life. Why would I join you? Bellamy immediately questioned. The last crew he would think of joining were the Straw Hats themselves. However, Luffy didn't care about his response as he approached. You don't understand, I'm not asking you a question or giving you an option, Luffy spoke, and Bellamy only had time to stand up as his head was grabbed by Luffy's hand and smashed onto the counter, falling the next moment while even the bartender, who had been frozen, jumped back scared and looked at Luffy cautiously and trembling. The same thing you did to Luffy. Luffy thought about the original story and found it satisfying to do this to Bellamy. He looked at the trembling man in front of him now. Take this for the damages, Luffy said as he threw a bag of berries to the man. The man couldn't even respond, as much as he didn't want this pirate's money, but also, it could offend him and he just remained silent. Luffy grabbed Bellamy and dragged him out of the tavern, shooting up into the sky while the rumors of Monkey D. Luffy appearing on the island quickly spread to everyone, causing pirates to start moving around looking for the pirate for a rare chance to join his fleet.
However, Luffy was already far away, traveling with an unconscious Bellamy, secured by his own clothes by Luffy as he approached another island.
This next island was a mid-sized kingdom subordinate to the world government, with a large marine outpost and good trade, especially in rice and other agricultural foods.
Even their ports were bustling with the construction of ships, from small to medium-sized vessels, and with a huge amount of fishermen selling seafood at the market that gathered tens of thousands of people every week. But this was not important to Luffy, as he traveled over the country, crossing over the king's palace and continuing through the middle of the capital. Meanwhile, in a place below him, there was a small warehouse. In this place, there was a small group of people gathered there. While some seemed quite injured with bandages, others looked fine, but still tired.
We need to get out of this kingdom soon,
one of them commented while the others agreed. This was the former CP9, with the members having to flee after the events that occurred at Eni's lobby, being marked as outlaws by the government chasing them. The former government agents had no choice but to flee, and the pursuit intensified even more with the fall of Marineford, with high-ranking members being relocated to capture them. Their last encounter with their pursuers did not end very well, as they faced a member of CP0 in person and managed to escape by luck, but Rob Lucci ended up injured along with others to have a chance to flee. They were trying to recover while staying hidden in that warehouse. "It's getting harder and harder," Mia Khalifa murmured as she tended to Lucci's wounds. "This is really bad," Kaku murmured, keeping an arm supported after being broken. "I knew we'd be betrayed by our own organization one day,"
Jabra exclaimed furiously.
"We made a mistake, so we're disposable," Rob Lucci said as if he accepted his situation very well.
"How can you speak so naturally about this?" Jabra complained again. "Anyway, let's head to South Blue."
"We can pass through the calm belt flying with Jeppo," Bueno said, and the others agreed. "That's right, let's just rest here today and leave this island," Lucci spoke at the end. But at that moment, the door of the warehouse simply opened and everyone went into combat mode, looking with surprise and caution as a shadow cast in front of the sun. He began to enter the place, as his figure finally became visible, and their old enemy, Monkey D. Luffy, entered the place, finding them finally, still carrying an unconscious Bellamy while all the other members looked stunned.
Straw Hat, Lucci immediately frowned and clenched his teeth. "How did you find us?" Khalifa immediately exclaimed.
"I don't think that matters now," Luffy shrugged as he approached them. "Anyway, I'm here to give you a chance beyond just running away through all the blues until you're captured again by the world government," Luffy explained.
"What do you mean?"
Lucci narrowed his eyes.
"Simple. If you want to come work for me, I'll give you security to escape from the world government. After all, you were only pursued for failing your mission," he said, leaving the CP9 members even more surprised.
Luffy wasn't so desperate to hire them, so he let them choose, unlike Bellamy, who was forcibly taken. They looked at each other for a while, seeming to think, when finally someone stepped up to Luffy.
"Let me work for you," Bueno spoke. "Bueno, what are you doing? You're going to trust him?"
Khalifa exclaimed, but Bueno shrugged.
"Do we have much choice?"
"At least he is powerful enough to ward off the government, and I'd rather work against the government at this point," he said, still frustrated with the situation, so he didn't think twice before accepting Luffy's request.
"Good," Luffy murmured, pleased with this.
Of all there, Bueno was the one he was most interested in. After all, he possessed an important fruit, one he even considered stealing after killing him before delivering him to Eni's lobby, but Luffy wasn't so cruel as to kill a prisoner.
"Sorry, guys, but I also see no way out in continuing to run from the government."
"At least we'll be aligning with someone powerful," Jabra declared, leaving the other members looking at him with furrowed brows, while Jabra walked up to Bueno who knelt before Luffy and did the same. The others thought a bit, and many looked at Rob Lucci, seeing what he would choose, but he simply shook his head. "I won't ally with you, much less intend to work for you," he finally spoke, and Luffy wasn't offended. In fact, he wanted Lucci to become a challenge for him in the future, someone he could fight. After all, the sea is more satisfying with obstacles as Luffy sails. Then, Luffy just watched as all the others decided to follow Lucci.
"Well, let's go. We have to head to my current HQ," he said, while Bueno and Jabra followed him.
It didn't take long for the three to start flying out of the island. Meanwhile, Lucci just looked out the distance through the warehouse window. I swear I'll defeat you one day, Straw Hat, he murmured. And if Luffy heard that, he would be satisfied with the determination.
Chapter 316 Meeting. Third-person POV. Skypiea.
Luffy arrived in Skypiea a while after his crew was still in the City of Angels, while Gonfall was talking with Yamato and Nojiko about the events of the Blue Sea and Luffy's plans.
Let me go.
Luffy heard Bellamy murmur beneath him, as the man had already regained consciousness. But Luffy didn't seem to care about the man and turned his attention back to his crewmates as he approached, accompanied by Bueno and Jabra following him through the air. Luffy eventually landed near Gonfall and his companions, with the old man greeting him.
How are things? Luffy asked.
Things were quiet regarding the training. We just had the issue with the prison break. No one could stop them, Gonfall said.
I can understand, after all, we're talking about one of Big Mom's 3 most powerful commanders, Luffy said inside.
I want a complete report on all this. I'll check the damages more in my cabin. For now, I'm going to see our former members. Luffy said, looking at the gigantic laboon in the middle of the city, each thing he said sounding like a sonic turbine echoing throughout the place.
Can't this guy go to the Cloud Sea? Luffy couldn't help but ask, yet he headed to the location with the new members. Hugo.
Luffy called his companion as soon as he went to the square while the big man looked at his captain.
I want you to put these new members into training as well. But this one is kind of rebellious, you know? Luffy said as he tossed Bellamy toward Hugo, unable to do anything but grit his teeth. Let me go.
Bellamy exclaimed, but he couldn't free himself from Hugo's grasp even as he transformed his arms into spring legs and tried to pull away with them pressed against Hugo's body, who just looked at him as if the blonde was an idiot.
Easy there, Blondie. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of fun here, understand? Hugo spoke with a small smile.
That's great, I'm thinking of making him the supervisor of the new recruits. I want you to train them as I did with our crew one day, Luffy said, still remembering how merciless he was with the members from the start. He didn't even care about his wives begging him to be gentler.
Meanwhile, beside them, Bueno and Jabra looked at each other frowning. Let's go.
Hugo said, carrying Bellamy, and the two, having no choice, followed him as Hugo began explaining things. Luffy approached the square with the crowd gathered around his members chatting with each other, when someone jumped over the people, while Luffy saw Yuta approaching him at immense speed. Luffy accepted the girl's strong hug as she squeezed him with tears in her eyes, swinging her twin tails in front of him.
How are you, my love, he said, kissing the girl's lips affectionately.
I'm fine, but I saw what happened in the war. I saw you being pierced, I was so scared when I saw that. Yuta said as she hugged him with all her strength. Luffy gently patted her back. Sorry you had to see that, he also made a small caress on her head.
Don't worry.
I'm here now and well, soon we'll be so strong that we won't ever need to be hurt like that again. It won't happen to me again, and I won't let anyone be hurt like that, Luffy said as the girl nodded in agreement.
I believe in you,
she said with a tone that understood Luffy's words.
Now let's see the others.
He put her down as he proceeded to the center of the place with the crowd of Scythians quickly clearing a path for him.
Luffy looked at the massive mass beside them. Laboon.
Luffy greeted his friend, as a huge eye stared down at him.
The sonic explosion of Laboon opening its mouth to talk like any whale made most cover their ears as Luffy broke into a smile. As he arrived, he saw almost all his members gathered chatting. While Yamato and Nojiko were still talking with Gonfall, Shirahoshi next to Megalo in their gigantic sizes, Usopp, Chopper chatting with Brook and Frankie. Lamy and Reiju in another one of their typical arguments. Alvida, Vivi with Karu, Kuina, Robin, and Baby 5 were talking. Chaochu and Hachi were joining the others at that moment to play. Luffy had already been noticed, but some members came to greet him. Captain! Brook exclaimed as he went up to Luffy and Yuta. It's so good to see you again. Yah-ho ho ho. You protected everyone in the war, he said, laughing with his iconic laugh. Hello, Brook. Luffy commented. Captain, you were super strong in the war, Frankie exclaimed as he approached, crossing his two arms in his iconic stance. Yes. It's good to see you too, Frankie, and I see you've started testing the projectiles I gave you. Luffy noticed some modifications on Frankie's body. Shark! Shark! Shark!
Megalo exclaimed next to Shirahoshi after her friend had been telling her about her adventure on Fishman Island.
How's Megalo? Luffy said to the 20-meter shark.
There was also a giant monkey staring at Luffy a few meters from Shirahoshi and giant Megalo.
Greg! You've returned to your normal size, it's a pity since I won't be able to put you on my shoulder. Luffy said.
Even so, I want you powerful until the end of our training.
Luffy spoke while the red gorilla nodded. Luffy went over to the remaining crew members. Where are my sister, Bonnie, Perona, Nami, Bippo, Domino, and Rebecca? Luffy asked curiously with none of them there.
Your sister went into a restaurant in town along with Bonnie. Rebecca seems very embarrassed, and Perona is the same way, hiding from us without seeming to mingle much. Zoro got lost as always, while Bippo went to Amazon Lily to fetch Black Pearl. Domino stayed in the ship's prison, and Rayleigh is talking to that woman named Gloriosa in Amazon Lily, Kuina said, while Luffy looked at the women's island floating among all the other islands around Skypiea.
I see. But what about Nami?
Luffy asked, somewhat satisfied with the island now there and about Domino finally accepting her job as a jailer, taking care of Caesar, Page 1, and Monet being the only prisoners on her ship at the moment. He also found Perona and Rebecca together with Kairos in a corner chatting, but afraid to socialize with the crew as others usually did. Luffy didn't blame them for that, he would have to talk to them later. As for his sister, she seemed to naturally get along well with Bonnie while eating
and having fun around the city. About Nami. Kuina sighed, but someone interrupted her before she could continue. She's in the Golden Palace built for you. Nojiko approached with Yamato at this moment. Palace.
Luffy murmured until he remembered seeing something shiny in the middle of the upper garden, but thought it was just part of Shandora that he hadn't moved.
Luffy-sama. A Scipion approached.
Luffy looked at him confused. We built a residence for you as the new god of Skypiea, he said, pointing towards the forest where Shandora was located, and for the first time, Luffy saw a huge palace.
How did you shape gold like that? Luffy was surprised. We learned to do many things during this time, Luffy-sama.
So we built a palace for our god, he said, and Luffy was a bit confused. After all, he never said he would be the god of Skypiea. While they could place Gonfall in this role and this place would just be his territory and an area used as his HQ.
That doesn't sound bad.
I'll soon take a look to see how it turned out. Nami must be ecstatic there, it's better we see her before she goes crazy.
Luffy murmured before looking at other members of his fleet in the city.
He saw a group hidden looking at him while gossiping.
What are they doing, huh? I don't know, Captain. They're very strange and just keep shouting, exclaiming from afar, but they're afraid to approach.
Are you sure they're trustworthy? Alvida commented as Luffy wanted to laugh at Bartolomeo in that corner, his eyes looking like stars, but he was just an observer.
It's okay, they're like that, but they're trustworthy, Luffy shrugged. Captain. Marry me. Lola appeared at this moment, while everyone fell silent to that question. No. Luffy shrugged. 4,852 rejections.
All the members behind Lola shouted, even the Scipions, in a chorus for Luffy, as he frowned at this bizarre scene.
Captain. How are you after the war? If you need a good wife, I can give you a massage. Lola said, winking one eye at Luffy. Do you want to die?
I'm the only one who can give a massage to the master. Baby 5 exclaimed while her hand turned into a weapon to attack Lola. Luffy sighed and noticed Foxy among the crowd. He was silent and looked much more serious than when Luffy had caught him. Now he was really getting strong and his fruit would be very well utilized.
Yuta. Can you step back a bit?
Luffy suddenly asked, while the girl, closer to Luffy than anyone else, nodded even though she didn't understand.
Luffy then looked up to the sky. Who's banded? A female voice came like a yellow bullet falling on him the next second.
A huge explosion then occurred where Luffy was, with him appearing a moment later with the smoke cloud lowering, him in the middle of a crater with a woman clinging to him. What the hell is this? Someone exclaimed in surprise, looking there cautiously, while the woman began to look at Luffy angrily and with concern as indicated by the tears on her face.
You went to that damn war and almost died.
Makino immediately exclaimed, grabbing her husband after falling with him with her full weight, but he just easily grabbed her and didn't even move from the spot while the ground was destroyed. Luffy sighed. After all the women were quite worried about him. He had to understand their concern.
It's all right now. I went through it and got stronger too. None of this will happen again.
We'll talk more later. For now, I'm going to organize things. If you're here, it means Galdino also received my call.
He spoke and noticed someone approaching the next moment. I'm here, boss.
Galdino landed next to him. Luffy had called only him and Makita to Skypiea, seeing that things seemed controlled in their kingdoms. Bonclay would train with Ivankov, picking him up in Alabasta, and the other members of the Baroque Works would still be working as sentinels in other kingdoms except for Mr. One and Crocodile, who are no longer from the Baroque Works and went to the New World as independent pirates. Crocodile will still belong to my crew, Luffy thought, and let go of Makita. Now let's see the palace made of gold. I want everyone with reports for me to read, before seeing what happened in the prison and the escape of Cracker with the main family members of Germa 66. Luffy declared before heading to the upper yard with his members. Some information about the Straw Hats below. Information. Harem, Hancock, Yamato, Shirahoshi, Lamy, Reiju, Nami, Nojiko, Alvida, Vivi, Robin, Yuta, Makita. Lovers, Baby 5. Children, none. Main crew members, Luffy, Captain, Yamato, Vice Captain, Zoro, Kuina, Shirahoshi, Usopp, Chopper, Lamy, Reiju, Nami, Nojiko, Alvida, Vivi, Robin, Hachi, Baby 5, Chachu, Bippo, Enel, Hugo, Jimbei, Lucy, Domino, Perona, Rebecca, and Bonnie, Frank, Brooke, Yuta. Official animals, Karu, Laboon, Greg, and Megalo. Main fleet members, Hancock, Foxy, Makita, Galdino, Lola, Bellamy, Bueno, Jabra, Viola, Spy, Kairos, Bartholomew. Potential contractors, Page 1, Monet. Scientists, Shiki's scientist and Caesar Crown. Future projects, genetic enhancement of giant animals, dinosaurs from Little Garden, Germa 66 clones, creating Wappa Metal, Super Soldier Project, shipbuilding, secret project, a project only between Luffy and Enel, which will be done on the moon, enhancing the 3 hockey types with all members, studying the secret conqueror's hockey technique of the lost century. Ships, 20. Fleet members, 5,000 soldiers. Countries in his territory, Goa Kingdom, Syrup Kingdom, Kokoyashi Kingdom, Shimatsuki Village, Whiskey Peak, Drum Kingdom, Alabasta, Skypiea, Luminarchy, Water 7, Amazon Lily. Soldiers from all kingdoms, 100,000. Future kingdom projects, Little Garden, Juya, Dressrosa, Ueno, Egghead, Sabaody. Allies, Rayleigh, Whitebeard Pirates, Red Hair Pirates. Available fruits, Uo no Mi, Model, Surayu, Smile Project, Baku Baku no Mi, Icon no Mi, Rama. Am I forgetting any information? I won't research about pacifistas, Luffy has no interest. I took a long time to write this because there was a lot of information I had to look up. That's it for this part. Thank you for listening to What If There Was a Different Luffy. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Also again, this series What If Transmigrated to Yu-Gi-Oh! GX is almost finished for now due to catching up with the current number of chapters. So I would like everyone's input for the next project on this channel. I am currently debating between 3 fanfics. 1. What If Transmigrated as Harry Potter? 2. What If Ninja in Jujutsu Kaisen? 3. What If Sign-In System in High School DxD? Please comment below on what fanfic you would like to see next on this channel. I will also be creating a poll for the same.